Coming up, Scott Murphy from All 90s Action All the Time and New Horror Express will be on. We'll be talking about Attack Force, Steven Seagal movie. So that'll be a fun conversation there. And then next week, Mitch from the Video Vacuum will be on. We'll be talking about The Dragon Lives Again, Bruce exploitation film, which actually coincides. I didn't realize this. I don't. Mitch just put out a new book, and we'll be talking about his new book, The Kung Fu Companion, and I didn't realize when we did this episode that it would actually coincide with Severin Films putting out a whole kind of Bruce exploitation or the clones of Bruce Lee collection of movies. So, and actually, The Dragon Lives Again is included in that. So it's going to be really interesting. We'll be talking about this movie that at the time, I think we were talking about, seeing it on YouTube, but when you listen to the episode, you could actually go to Severin Films and pick it up. So, an interesting quirk there, an interesting way that those two dovetail. And then the week after, Ty from Comeuppance is back on. We'll be looking at two Eric Roberts Asylum films. We're looking at Top Gunner and then Top Gunner America versus Russia. These are kind of in honor of his birthday. So we'll be posting them on the 16th of April. His birthday is the 18th of April. So little Eric Roberts birthday celebration there with Ty from Comeuppance. So that'll be in 2 weeks' time. And then, we're recording some other episodes. We get scheduled some more episodes. So as we get those recorded, I'll kind of have those updates in here as well. And then in terms of the site, we'll be looking at the Fantastic Four movie this weekend here. So the Corman one, I watched that one for one of those previous DTVC extra episodes. So that'll be what we'll be covering this weekend. And I think the week after might be Paradise City. We might finally get that one in. John Travolta and Bruce Willis, which is one that Ty and I covered on the site. So we'll get that one in. Also, One Ranger will be coming up soon. So that's a Jesse V. Johnson movie. One of his, not his most recent, right? Because I think Boudica is his most recent. But this is like his Penn most recent? Is that can we say that? Like penultimate, right? Second most recent? But we'll be looking at that one. That's another one that Ty and I have covered on the site. I think we did it for our Melky on the Skids episode for John Malkovich movies because he's also in One Ranger along with Thomas Jane. So look for those reviews coming there. And then DTVC Extra. Next week, we'll be back with DTVC Extra. We'll be looking at the two Alien versus Predator movies. So we're going to kind of continue that Predator look. I will say the ones that we put out on Thursday, they've gotten some really good reception so far. So that's really good to see. So definitely check those out. And then finally, before we get to the episode, it is Indie April. So if you know any indie creatives out there, get out there and support their work. This is the month to do it if you were ever going to do it in any month, whether it's putting some money towards an Indiegogo or picking up whatever product it is. And of course, in my case, if you're up for supporting me, if you don't know any other indie creatives other than me, as doing this podcast here, you've got my novels. Don's House in the Mountains is available. You can get check the podcast link in the description. Bainbridge, my short action novel. Also, the link to my author page is in the podcast description. You can always click on that, see all of my books there, and pick out any of them to buy. So that's always, you can do it that way as well. But again, Indie April, this is the month. If there was ever a month that you were going to support indie creatives, this was the month to do it. So we'll get into the episode. One quick note about the episode. So when Scott and I did this one, we recorded it on CleanFeed, which is a service that actually Will from Exploding Helicopter turned me on to. So most of the time when I record episodes, we do it on Skype. So the person calls me on Skype, we do an audio call, and I just hit the record button on Skype, the record feature. It records an MP4, and then I convert it to an MP3, and that's our audio that we have for the episode. So that's usually how it works. But we had some issues with Skype, and so we use CleanFeed, which is my sort of my backup one that I picked up from Will. One of the things about CleanFeed is that CleanFeed is I don't want to say it's less forgiving. It's much more. It records a lot more than Skype does. Skype is really just meant to be recording. It's meant to be just recording, your business meetings and things like that. So it doesn't pick up sound quite as well. So I tried to filter out some of the excess noise that was coming on my end. So the other thing I learned is that my microphone that I picked up for it's a USB mic I picked up for maybe $30 on Amazon, something like that, maybe even 20. It wasn't a lot of money. Picks up a lot more sound than I realized when I listened back to the episode. So when I first tested it out with Scott, everything sounded okay. But then when I listened listened again, there was a lot of background noise on my end. I've got a fan overhead that I must just, maybe in my head I don't hear it. It's one of those overhead ceiling fans. I've got to probably turn it off from now on when I record. But yeah, so I tried to filter as much of that sound as possible. But the thing is, this episode was really fun. This was a really good, funny episode here that Scott and I did. So it was a great time, and so I want to make sure we got the episode in. But yeah, I think I'm learning with Clean Feed that I've got to be a little bit more precise about how I record audio. It's not like the Skype kind of set it and forget it situation that I can do normally when I record. So again, if I'm, I think if I'm going to start kind of moving this podcast into kind of another level, I've kind of probably get better in terms of my recording techniques and all of that. I'm using Audacity for the most part to kind of clean up the audio, which has its limitations as well. But anyway, I just want to give you the heads up on that. Yeah, if you hear some things in the audio, I tried to clean up as much as I could, but that's the reality, is that my microphone's better than I thought it was, and it picks up more background noise than I expected. So yeah, but otherwise, it's a fun episode, and why don't we we'll get into our theme song here and jump right into the episode here. So coming up after the theme song, Scott and I are going to be talking about Attack Force. We are back, and I'm joined once again by Scott Murphy from All 90s Action All the Time and New Horror Express. Welcome back, Scott.
It's good to be back, Matt. It's always fun to chat on this podcast.
Yes, I can't believe we're now on our fourth Seagal film of your this odyssey of going through Seagal's DTV work. So I'm wondering if there was anything in the first three that we've watched here that prepared you for what we're about to encounter or endeavor on coming up here.
Not so much in the episodes we've covered, I have to say. But I was kind of prepared. I think Against the Dark. I watched Against the Dark last year, and I feel that prepared me for the absolute awfulness of this movie.
Yeah, I mean, this is a complete. Like, it's funny because the ones we've done so far have a level of ridiculousness in them that it's part and parcel with the fun Seagalness here. But this one, and the funny thing about this one, this is like a level of ridiculous that didn't even involve Seagal, right? It was sort of after the fact. So it's going to be an interesting one when we get into it.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's this. I mean, Seagal's part of it, and I mean, I guess we'll get into it. We'll get into the Seagal piece of it all. But yes, there's many elements. Everything went wrong, and I don't know. I guess maybe we should start talking about the fact it was going to be a different movie.
Yes.
Maybe if it was that different movie, it might have been better? Question mark.
So to get everybody a sense, we're talking about the movie Attack Force, which was the third of three films that Seagal had come out in 2006. And so we've actually done the other two. We've done Shadow Man and we've done Mercenary for Justice. And so the premise going into making this movie, so you had Seagal working with screenwriter Joe Halpin and then director Michael Koish. I think we determined that we call him Koish because I think he's originally from Canada, but I believe he's of German descent and makes movies in Germany. And he did Shadow Man, I believe, right? I think that was the one. Yeah.
It was Shadow Man that he did.
Yeah. Exactly. And then he actually goes on and does Flight of Fury after this one, which when we tell you what we're going to tell you, I'm surprised. Maybe they'd already done Flight of Fury before before this happens. But anyway, the three of them made a movie called Harvester that was a sci-fi horror movie where Seagal and his men are battling an invading force of vampire space aliens. And for whatever reason, after they delivered this finished film, the distribution company or the production, in the production company, a combination of the two, they decided they didn't like the space alien part of it and just decided to make it about a super addictive drug that turns people into superhuman killers. They decided to call it Attack Force. They couldn't, Seagal doesn't do his ADR when it's the same part, right? So if having him come back and do reshoots for completely different lines was not going to happen there. I guess they got some of the lower paid actors to come in and do some new scenes, but what we've got is this thing that's this completely re-edited mishmash of stuff with a completely different voice over Seagal's. I said in my review that it sounded like Martin Sheen, but actually it sounds like one of the other actors. I think that I want to say it might have been Andrew Bicknell. But I'm not sure. But either way, it's a completely different voice from Seagal's. The movie is just all kinds of wackiness because of this. It's a completely fascinating thing, ridiculous, all kinds of different things.
It's completely mental film to watch, and it's they've not re-edited it well. Like This film ends up kind of being like a lot of the parts of an action film that you don't see. Like at the end of the movie, I was like, this could be called like exposition and establishing shots of the movie, because it's so much padding for like a 95 minute film. That's how it was.
Yeah, I believe it is.
95-minute film. Like so much of it, we're killing time. And I know you've joked a lot on the podcast before with other guests about like Seagal just like not moving, just it being a kind of sit down role. And so much of Seagal's part in this movie is just sitting in like hotel lobbies in a big chair, being like, "Yeah, man," like.
Yeah. It's absolutely amazing, and and you get it right away. The thing is, you know you're in for something different right away, because the familiar piece, right, is Seagal driving, right, where it's just there's scenes of just Seagal sitting behind a wheel, just kind of playing with the steering wheel, and then outside establishing shots of an SUV driving around doing something official or serious or something like that. And we're used to that with Seagal, right? That's Seagal's favorite kind of part. It's just, put me in a car with a green screen behind me that makes it look like I'm driving. That's great. But then you hear a voice that does not sound like Seagal. And it's like, wait a second, is that Seagal saying that? Or is that the person he's working in contact with who's doing like the Roger and all that kind of stuff that you usually see? So it sort of takes a few minutes. I don't know if you had the same thing that for me, where it takes some time to get the hang of the fact that, that's actually supposed to be Seagal that's talking.
Yeah, so like, I guess when I watched it on Tubi, the subtitles kind of automatically came up. So like it came up Marshall, and I knew it was Marshall. So it was fine. And I guess even if that wasn't the case, I'm kind of used to watching the DTV films that he done, where you get like a shot, like you say, a shot of outside the car, and then you hear a voice that's like an ADR voice. And I know that like Seagal never does that, so I'm used to Seagal's some other random voice that's supposed to be Seagal's character. What threw me more, because I didn't read up on the film beforehand, was and I forgot reading about it in the Seagalology book. So like, what threw me more was like when he walked into the hotel and it was still that voice coming out of his mouth, and I was like, oh, so this is going to, and then like it ends up being that I think you hear Seagal's real voice for maybe about 30% of his life.
Well, and not only is it 30%, but it can be mixed, because there are some moments where his line fits with what's going on in the film, so they just keep it. And so it's like one moment hard to describe. Like I said, Martin Sheen in the review. I'm trying to think of how it's like somebody doing an impression of Seagal, but still has a little bit sharper tone when they're doing the impression. It's like, yeah, I don't know what you guys think about this, but I'm gonna get my men and get out of here or something. It's
it's not even like a great impression. It's like just another somebody trying to do an impression, but can't get it.
I know what you mean, and like it's off-putting as well because not only is it like another voice that doesn't match up with his lips, which is funny in the first place, but like you say, it's got like this. The voice has like this sharper tone that makes him sound like it's like a cartoon villain. It's very kind of yeah. What about this, guys? You know, and you're like,
Right.
what? Krang! You know, like
Yeah, right. This Snidely Whiplash and Wacky Races. Like I didn't even think of that. That would have been great if like you had like a dog with him that was like laughing the whole time. They'd like edited in a dog that laughed. That would have been fantastic.
So that threw me as well. Just like kind of how cartoony the voice was. I was like, oh, this is very Saturday morning cartoon. So I was like, oh man, I don't know about this.
Exactly. So yeah, maybe I'll give a quick synopsis, and then we'll kind of start breaking this thing down like we do as we kind of make our way through it, because there's a lot in this movie that happens that's just it's so this movie is so all over the place that which the thing is, right, it should be all over the place based on what it went through to make it. It's kind of a because I recently watched the 2015 Fantastic Four movie, just because I was watching the two MCU movies that came out that year, Avengers: Age of Ultron and Ant-Man, and I kind of wanted the context of that Fantastic Four movie. And it's interesting because that one has like some reshoots that are done because the studio didn't like the director's vision of it, and they, so you get like things like Kate Mara's hair is different in certain scenes and stuff like that, and it's like a little bit disjointed. But this is just like so like it's like I think it's kind of almost like for people that watch these kind of movies like we do, when we see a Fantastic Four, it's almost like it doesn't seem so bad, right? Whereas like the rest of the world is like, I'm not spending any money to go see that in the theater.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Like, I think there's like a kind of, I mean, I guess there is certainly bigger movies that are proper awful and kind of on the same level as this. But yeah, I think like to a mainstream audience, there is a certain type of shonkiness that blockbusters have that we view, having seen a number of these kind of DTV films, and being like, yeah, it's shonky, but there's still a bare minimum of professionalism going on.
Exactly, which is what we don't have here. So yeah, no, so here's the plot of what this movie is. Now, not the plot that we were supposed to get, but the plot of this movie. Seagal and his partner Dwayne Dixon, who's I guess like an inspector or something, who's working abroad. We're told that this is France, Europe. So not to be confused with the France that's in Asia or in Africa, but the European France. That's where we are, which of course is Romania. This is not. And it's so obviously Romania, right? Why it needed to be set in France, which is probably another, I guess because they had a French actor. Maybe that's what it was.
I think so.
Yeah.
Although, it is obviously Romania, and it's even more obviously Romania because we did that episode covering Shadow Man, and
Right.
they definitely reused some of the buildings that they used in Shadow Man.
Exactly, because it's the same director, and I'm sure he was just like, oh, like that bar worked really well, or like you said, those buildings, some of those buildings, they were like,
There's like that white mansion building. That's
Right.
definitely that was definitely in Shadow Man.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's kind of funny because Shadow Man, right? We were just like, we're not going to question the fact that Seagal, his daughter, and his widow's father, his father-in-law, are going to have some kind of get together in Romania. We're just like, just get us to Romania. That's fine. If you're going to shoot in Romania, just have it set in Romania. Whereas this movie, they're like, no, it's France, in Europe, France, Europe. But you just buy it. And this one inspector speaks with a French accent, so that makes it France enough, right? And whereas like nobody else in this movie is French at all. There's not a single other French person in it. It's the most un-French. It's like it kind of feels like maybe like 1920s Paris when all the American expats were trying to get away from Prohibition, so they're all just living in Paris. That might have been what Paris felt like at that time. It felt like a attack force, only not Romania.
It is pretty amazing, like how un-French it is.
Yeah.
We got like the vast majority of the cast, once again, much like Shadow Man, there's a lot of similarities. Much like Shadow Man, the vast majority of the cast is British people pretending to be American people.
Right. Yeah, and then if you look through like all the extras and everybody else, they're Romanian. And
yes.
yeah, and I mean, I don't know. Like, I'm sure there are probably some rougher parts of Paris where you can find like a strip club that has the kind of danger that you see in these Eastern European strip clubs, where you're just like, you're getting into trouble, right? Something bad is going to happen to you at those places, and why American servicemen like to go to those and get themselves into that kind of trouble, or like, we know how bad of a guy Seagal is because he can handle himself in an environment like that. But I mean, I'm sure Paris probably has some really rough places to go to, but they aren't the kind of like clip joint kind of vibes. And when I say clip joint, I mean like a place where you go to have a drink with a lady just happens to sit at your table, and the next thing you know, you've got a $3,000 bill. Kind of environment that these places are. Yeah, it's just amazing how where these things come from. But yeah, quick on the plot here. It's just that the servicemen so whatever Seagal and his partner are doing, they need 3 people on their team to do it. And they go out for a night on the town. They bring a lady of the night home with them, not realizing this lady of the night has taken this drug called CTX, and she kills all 3 of them. This is a problem because they were supposed to be keeping a low profile, not the servicemen, but the people on CTX, because they're planning to, I guess, poison the water in France, in Paris, with this drug. But now with Commander Marshall Lawson, aka Steven Seagal, on the case, they've got too much heat on them, and so Seagal starts to kind of uncover what's happening here. Turns out the CIA's involved, because of course they would have to be, and he's given like these knife blade things that's supposed to help him, because the CTX stuff, it gives people like it heightened adrenaline that gives them essentially superpowers. They have like super strength and super fast reflexes, and Seagal's given these blades that are supposed to make it so he can fight against them better. So suddenly he's got those reflexes, which we have at the end fight scene. All kinds of goofiness there. And again, Seagal kind of unravels everything and saves the day. Yeah, I guess maybe we could start with the servicemen. Maybe that's the best place to start, because we get one of those scenes that you've talked about in kind of previous Seagal films that we've watched, where other people tell Seagal how great he is, and we get these servicemen hanging around, like getting ready to meet Seagal, and they're talking about how awesome he is.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, well, they're all big fans. They're all like desperate to meet him, like he's some sort of like rock star or something. Like. He's the best.
Right. Like he's a badass, I hear the line was something like he's not just a badass. He's not just a badass. He's a fucking badass, or something like that. I guess some kind of line like that. I can't remember. And of course, like there's like the newbie guy, right, who's like doing dips with the chair, and the and he's like I don't know what that was about, but he's like talking about how excited he is to meet him, and then when they actually do meet him, the team say something really obnoxious, where Seagal's just kind of sitting there talking, just letting them tell him how great he is, and then I think they say something like, because he said something about like them doing, I don't remember what it was, doing their job right. I can't remember exactly what it was, but one of them says, well, you could just have us all killed or something like that if we don't like perform properly or something. And he was like, yeah, I might do that or something. And it was like supposed to be a big joke amongst them, which was like the weirdest thing to joke about.
Yeah, it does seem very strange. They were like, they're not particularly memorable. A lot of people in this film are kind of people that I've kind of like half seen in things, like there's a lot of British actors. A lot of them, I looked a lot of them up, and they were like, oh yeah, they've been in like soaps and like random TV programs and stuff like that. But like I didn't, because they don't really. Like looking at the credits, I saw like their names and stuff like that. But like in the film, they don't like kind of mention the character names. Right. So like in my notes, I just wrote Dude Bro Crew. That was the only, because they're just all 3 indecipherable white guys, and like they're big, kind of handsome white guys, and they have that kind of kind of dude bro vibe about them. They're like, you know, the second that they get time off, they're like, yeah, okay, let's go to the strip club, man. You know, like.
Right. Well, and the thing that blew my mind about that is that while they're meeting with Seagal and his partner, you know, David Kennedy is the actor, Dwayne Dixon. When they're meeting with him they're meeting with them at a bar to kind of debrief what they're going to be doing, and they tell the guys, you need to be back here at 0700, and I don't know about you. I mean, yes, being younger, I guess, you know, you can probably maybe party a little bit more. But the moment that I hear I've got to be somewhere at 7 in the morning, even as like a, you know, yes, there were definitely times where I partied and went to work, but I was working at like dishwashing jobs where I could make it through a dishwashing job hungover. I don't know that I want to be like doing a job with Steven Seagal hungover, you know, but these guys were like, yeah, you know, we've got to be up at 7 in the morning. Let's go find a titty bar, as they put it. And I can't remember what Seagal's line was. He was like something like, "I'm too old for love and I'm too old for love," or something like that. It was just really another weird line. And the other guy's like, "I don't have enough money for that." That Dwayne Dixon guy. It's like, okay, they go and then they get themselves murdered.
Like that line really amused me because because you know, it's actually one of the lines that Seagal says in actual real Seagal voice,
Right.
and he's still doing his kind of Cajun-y voice, which is always kind of funny to listen to. He's like, "I'm too old for that," but then literally like 2 scenes later, a character, Tia, played by Lisa Lovebrand, comes and then they like have it off. And I wrote in my notes, apparently not too old for love.
Right.
Like literally 5 minutes later.
Right. And Lisa Lovebrand had such a great experience with this movie that she hasn't done anything since. She has not been in a. She was in 7 Seconds, which is a Wesley Snipes movie that I believe was also shot in Romania. But yeah, she decided that's it. I had my try. I did it. I guess she was also she had a small like bit part as a club patron or something in the really great movie about conjoined twins, Stuck on You, with Matt Damon and Greg Kinnear. Completely forgot that even existed. But yeah, but you're right.
That was on the downward slide of the Farrelly brothers.
Exactly. Yes. Exactly. Yeah, they had their time. Yeah, when you start making movies like that, that's the point where the vaudeville hook should be coming to pull you off the stage for sure. Yeah, you're absolutely right, because it's like again, it's like one of those things where it's like you, with a line like that, you think that he's just going to be this old solo guy who's not, you know, but instead, no, like you said, he's too old for love 1 minute. Now he's just, you know, hooking up with this woman the next, and yeah, that's, you know.
I guess we should also point out that, like, by this stage, Seagal is at, like, what, like in his mid-50s, and this woman is, like, in her mid-20s, I would guess.
Yeah. 06, definitely, yeah. So you're right, he'd be, like, 54. Well, so the funny thing about his age is that he is listed as being born in 52, but when I started, I think I've said this before, I think I said this on a previous episode that you were on, that when I started my site, he was born in 51. So when he actually was born, we don't know. So he could have even been even older. But definitely the girl that he's with, I mean, she at the oldest was born in the late 70s. So she's at least 25 years younger than him. Yeah. So and you know, she acts the same. I mean, later in the film, they have a really awkward hug. That comes up, which is very much like the one that he had with Eva Pope in the previous film. So I don't know if that has to do with, I don't know if there's the thing with Michael Koish where he has to do a scene with Seagal giving a woman an awkward hug in every Seagal film. I don't know if we watch a Flight of Fury if the same thing happens, but yeah, interesting scene there.
I think, like, I can't remember which one it is. It's maybe A Dangerous Man. I think, like, there's another one where I've definitely seen at least one other one where there's like an awkward sexy hug done.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think it is Dangerous Man, because that's the one, right, with the girl who she, like, he meets her. She's like she's like working for the Russian mob, I think. Or no, I think it's a Good Man. Good Man is one I'm thinking of, which also has an awkward hug.
I think A Dangerous Man is the one where he gets jailed for like something he didn't like. It's like his car gets hijacked, he
Right.
gets carjacked, and then he kills the guy accidentally or something, and then he goes to jail, and he comes out of jail, and then he gets caught up with the Russian mob. But like, I think like, if I'm remembering it right, it's like his wife is dead in that one, and like his flashback to his one memory that he has of his wife is like his wife is like half naked, and then and he's sitting on the edge of the bed, and then gives her a sexy hug,
Right.
and then like that's the whole memory.
Yes.
But I can't remember which one that is, but I definitely remember that being the scene.
No, it is Dangerous Man because somebody got a screen grab of it. It looks like on
Okay.
So Dangerous Man has it, and then A Good Man at the end he does this really awkward hug when he's doing. So the thing with A Good Man is that he meets this young woman at living in the apartment complex, and she's got this little girl with her, and we think initially the little girl is the daughter, and there's almost like this kind of like thing about her being like a single, like potentially being a single mother, and then suddenly it's like, oh no, she's my little sister, and it's like this, oh, look at, she hasn't been defiled. Like, this woman is perfect for Seagal waiting for, it's like so bad. And then at the end they have that really awkward love scene where it's just like he kind of wraps his hands around these women when he hugs them, and his hands are like flaccid, like they're just kind of hanging there almost.
Yeah.
It's a very awkward thing. And then so we get one of these here for sure with Lisa Lovebrand, but yeah. So
I feel like the I feel like we've unlocked something here, because we have like our Seagal checklist of like, does Seagal do like a vaguely ethnic accent? Do we get like a badass info dump of how badass his character is? I think like awkward sexy hug is like a new trope that we have to look out for in these films going forward.
You're absolutely right. Yes, because we've seen it in most of them. I'm trying to think if The Keeper had an awkward sexy hug as well with the friend's daughter.
Probably. I can't remember actually.
Right. Yeah.
But I think like, because I don't think so, because I do remember when we recorded that episode, I remember how young the daughter was,
Right.
and like I remember us being relieved that they didn't push it in a kind of romantic direction. They kept it as a kind of like, kind of fatherly kind of vibe,
Yeah.
rather than like a sexy vibe. Although she did like develop a crush on him, but he kind of batted that away, because we have to have that of like every woman in the picture has to be madly in love with Seagal and his general badassery.
Right, exactly. And I mean, for sure, like Lisa Lovebrand, of all the women in the picture, she is by far like the most, physically attractive, and would be the one that Seagal would want to be like, oh, she's got a thing for me, and there's like a thing, there's kind of a sense that they'd had a relationship in the past, and now it's like they have a relationship now, but it's like a friends with benefits kind of thing. I can't tell, something along those lines. But she's definitely willing to do whatever Seagal needs, for sure. So when it comes to like getting access and things like that, so which maybe I'm pushing too far ahead here. But what happens next is the guys bring there's for whatever reason, I don't remember, they never explained this, right? When the guys go to the strip club and they want to get pick up a lady of the night to take with them back to their hotel. There's one woman in particular that they really want, or one of the guys really wants, and I can't remember if they explained why he really wanted her. But it was almost like he knew she was going to be there. She was the one to pick up.
Yeah, no, they don't really. He just like zones in on her. They're like looking at a few people, and it is quite confusing as well. Like, because I was like, okay, so he really wants her. Like, this one guy really wants this woman that I think is called Raina.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
So he really zones in on her, and then they take her back to and then they get their other friend who is like being creepy to other strippers, who's like who's kind of portrayed as like the nerd one, and he's giving off real incel vibes at the strip club. So, but then they come back to the hotel with this one lady of the night, and I was like, are all three of them planning to make love?
Right.
What? Are they like having a foursome all together? Are they doing it separately? Like, I wasn't. But then they lock the nerdy one in the bathroom, and it it looks like they were just planning to have a threesome all along. Because I don't know. I mean, I'm creating new stories in my head, but maybe like the two guys are like secretly just want to be together, but like they can't admit it. So they're inserting a lady into the threesome.
Yeah, I kind of thought something similar because of the way that the two were. And I mean, obviously, Seagal might not want something like that. And it's interesting with Seagal, right? Because on the one hand, you could say he wouldn't want something like that in his movie, but then on the other hand, the fact that they get murdered by this woman might be the kind of message, the kind of really bad kind of message that someone like him would want to send in a movie like this. So it could have gone either way there, but I mean, there's definitely an element of the two of them, like these two guys with this woman, where it's almost like they've done this before, right? Like there's a sense that like they've been involved in this kind of threesome kind of deal. That
there's definitely a vibe, because like there's definitely a vibe that the third guy is like a very new guy and is very new to the team. But there's definitely a sense that the other two have known each other for like a long time.
Yeah.
And yeah, I definitely do get a sense when they're kind of romancing this lady or trying to seduce this lady, that this is not the first time that this is taking place. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, the other thing I was wondering about Michael Koish was if he had any kind of connection to the film Leaving Las Vegas, because in a way, right, like if he did, right, because this is almost like Elizabeth Shue's revenge from, the scene where she's assaulted by the three young men in Leaving Las Vegas, right? This Lady of the Night gets her revenge on these three young men. It's almost like a kind of like a reverse of that scene. And I mean, does she get her revenge? I mean, she pulls out these blades that she just have, the ones that we end up, seeing Seagal get later on. These, there's sort of like these knives that attach to like their wrists. So they allow you to kind of do like a sweeping motion with your forearm, and you can slash somebody's throat or stab them or whatever. And she takes out the first two guys, and then of course our poor young man in the bathroom who's banging on the door to get out. Which, the other thing about that, I don't know how you felt about that, but there's nothing about that that's not annoying. And I understand them wanting to put that in the movie to be like, oh, we want to separate this guy out from the other two because he's the new guy or something like that. But banging on a door constantly is really annoying. And I was like, would that guy just stop banging? I can't. But I also understand too, if you're locked in a bathroom, you want to bang, and bang on them to annoy them enough to get them to let you out. But so we get like kind of that annoying banging thing, and then suddenly the murders happen.
Yeah, for sure. And then like, but he dies in quite a funny way. I mean, we don't actually see him being murdered,
right?
But he's just banging away, and then all of a sudden the wall behind him like explodes, and like we see him get grabbed, and then that's kind of we're like, okay, that's obviously we're implying that guy's been murdered too. But yeah, I mean, I guess because we're talking about this murder scene, I guess we can talk about it now. One of the things that confused me about the film throughout the movie, that I think makes a lot more sense if they're just like vampire space aliens or whatever. So like the way that the woman Reina murders these guys is she kind of like hacks them to death. With this kind of like curved, like Klingon-esque blade. And so the thing that amused me about this is like throughout the movie, like we see like soldiers getting murdered by CTX users with this curved Klingon-like blade. And I was like, okay, but they're just being sold drugs. Do they get sold the blade with the drugs? Because, like, I get it if they're a vampire space alien race that they might have a curved Klingon-like blade, but where are all the CTX users getting it from in the context of this film?
Right, that's a great point. And the other thing, too, right, is I think that the curved blade came out of the necessity of having to cut together this vampire thing, because this curved blade, a lot of times the injuries that people get from this curved blade look a lot like bites to the throat. Like if somebody was like, ripping somebody's throat with their teeth,
Sure.
Yeah, because when Seagal gets his pair of them, right, it kind of makes sense that he gets his pair because in the context of the vampire aliens, he would need a weapon that would be able to take them out specifically. And so I wonder if what happened was when they were recutting the movie, if they were like, oh, we've got this prop here that we made Seagal have, right? Because it made, they were using it in the concept of the film. So when we do the reshoots with these sort of lower end actors, we'll just give them the blades as well and have them use it. But like you said, it comes up with this, it makes this idea that essentially these people that are distributing the CTX are almost saying like, okay, here's your vial of CTX, here's your needle, here's your hypodermic needle, and then here are these blades to attach to your wrists. Make sure you've got those as well.
Yeah, because when you become a killing machine after you're addicted to this in 12 hours, because it becomes addictive in 12 hours, you will need this because you want to murder people, and this is the most effective way to do it. I mean, it's not the best pitch for a drug. You're like, wait a second, this drug's going to make me addicted in 12 hours and make me into a mindless killing machine? I am not sold, sir.
Right, exactly. Yeah. If I were a distributor, I don't know enough about the film industry, obviously, to know like how distributors work. I watched some videos like this director Jay Horton that I follow, who he does interviews sometimes with distributors, and he'll talk with them about things, like what they look for, that kind of stuff. But it feels to me, if I were a distributor, a producer, whatever, that it would have been easier just to put out the movie that was given to me than to go through all this trouble to hack this whole thing together. That makes it way like the movie that we got at the end. I can't imagine the movie we have is worse than what they were given when they had the finished product.
No, I can't imagine. Like, it's been so butchered to death. Like, even I'm sure that the movie that they originally shot or whatever, I can't imagine that it was great. Because the script was written by Joe Halpin and Steven Seagal, not exactly great track records, and Michael Coyce, no offense to the guy, maybe his like German TV work is on point, and he's all good and he's very professional, so like, and he does seem to get regular work, so like maybe he's all right. But like, yeah, this is not exactly based on the things I've seen. Basically, just Shadow Man, maybe not the best, but yeah, I'm sure that at least it might have been more fun, more. I definitely would have been more coherent. So, like, yeah, I mean, I don't know why they've done this. Even if it was a kind of a bit of a shonky B movie, I think like the whole concept of like an alien vampire space alien race, that seems amusing to me. And then like, with the original film, we would have got mostly, I mean, I guess Seagal would mostly be sitting down, but like, again, at least we would get his normal voice for most of the film, not for the shots that are like, like ADR'd or whatever. But like, yeah, it definitely couldn't be any worse than this. For sure. There's no way you can convince me that the movie that they delivered was worse than the movie we got.
Exactly. Now, when we move from so what happens to Seagal and David Kennedy or Dwayne Dixon, you know, his partner, they go upstairs in this nice, you know, old-fashioned Eastern European / French hotel, and they see bloody footsteps coming from, or bloody footprints coming from the room that the guys were supposed to be in. They go inside. Of course, they see there's murders. They see that the killings have happened there. There's your classic Seagal, like I'm the one in charge kind of thing here, where there's a French inspector who comes and he's like, well, I got to take the bodies to the morgue, right? Because this is what we do, right? When murders happen, after we've processed the crime scene, we take the bodies to the morgue. And Seagal's like, no, I've got jurisdiction. They're coming to me. And the guy's like, well, no, that's not how it works. And Seagal's like, listen, I'm going to make a couple phone calls. In 20 minutes, you're going to get a call from somebody way up above you who's going to tell you who's in charge here, or something like that. It's like that kind of that classic like Seagal, like he's got the special clearances and he's got the take charge kind of thing.
Yeah, it's very much classic Seagal, like always having to be the biggest dick in the room, like you know,
yeah,
like there's so many of these types of scenes in movies where he just just goes out his way to like humiliate a person. They're like, well, actually, you think you're in charge, but give it a second, and you realize I'm the fucking man.
Exactly. So we have that moment. And then David Kennedy is the one who goes to find a character played by Adam Crosdell called Arun, I think the character's name is. Arun. He's the one who's handing out the CSX, the CTX? CTX. CSX, yeah. I was going to say CSX is a freight company here, a train freight company in the United States, and I keep getting the two mixed up, so I'll probably make that mistake throughout this podcast. But the CTX, so he goes to the bar and sees the guy who's, I guess, I don't know if we'd say he's the pimp or the madam. He's the one who's brokering the deals with these ladies of the night, at the same time giving them CTX so that they can go out and kill other people. And David Kennedy or Dwayne Dixon, he's talking to this guy and decides to bring him in, right, and question him in jail. And so he's questioning him from across the table. And this is where I'm wondering if David Kennedy is the one doing this interrogation and not Seagal, because this was a reshoot and all the CTX conversation, because they've got the actual vials and the syringes. If this was an entirely new scene that was added to the film to give the backstory on the CTX, and that's why Seagal's not in it.
Yeah, I think that could be the case, and I think it should be mentioned, and this happens a lot in this film, because like a lot of this film, so much of this film is like taken up with talking about things that have happened or things that are about to happen. Like just like talking about making plans or plans that have fallen through, or whatever. And this interrogation scene, which is not particularly interesting. I get that we need to get over the hump of like explaining what the CTX is, because we've completely redone the film, so we have to now explain why we've redone the film. But this interrogation goes on so long, and we just talk about the CTX for this is what the CTX, and it's like there's ways to do this where you kind of sparse it throughout the film of like this is how the CTX was developed. This is the effects of the CTX. This is the plan of the bad guys, to what they want to do with the CTX. But we just get it all in this like one long extended scene of like, yes, I was part of a chemistry team, yes, and then I kind of became a pimp because like I found that strippers were more pliable to being fed the CTX or something. I don't know. Like I don't know how he went from like chemist at like international lab to like running a quote unquote French strip club. Anyway, and then we just go on and on about the CTX and its addictive properties, and people get addicted in 12 hours, and then a bunch, and then he gives away his evil plan. It's like, oh yes, and he goes, yeah. And for like for a guy who says he's not going to talk, he talks quite a lot.
Well, there's that, right? That he talks quite a bit, but also the way that Dwayne is threatening him so that he will talk is he's got a syringe of the CTX loaded up, and he's threatening to shoot it into his neck, which he does anyway. So it's like also like the threat of whatever it is he's going to do. Turns out it actually helps Arun escape, right? Because he becomes super powerful with the CTX. But there's that other piece too where it's like, I'm just going to shoot you full of this vial here. And he's like, okay, I'll talk, But he ends up shooting him full of it anyway, so it didn't matter.
Yeah, and also like, I get that like, apparently the CTX will like eventually kill you. So that's, I guess you can be like, okay, well, I shot him up with this thing that will eventually kill him. But before it kills him, it will turn him into an unstoppable killing machine, which he was informed of. That was literally what Arun said. It's like they were experimenting it to give to soldiers because it makes them like mindless killing machines. And it's like, yes, give them the killing machine, bro. That's gonna work out great.
Right, that's a great point too. That it's like he gives him the thing, and of course the guy says you're going to regret that, which is weird too because actually no, that guy doesn't regret it. He leaves. It's the poor guard who comes in after to take him back to his cell who regrets it, right? So there's that part as well. But yeah, so now we, like you said, we've had a kind of a excruciatingly long exposition scene that tells us what CTX is, and we find out that Seagal, in the one moment where Seagal isn't like the king of everything, right? He goes into like this secret, top secret, or this, I said secret, top secret, this top secret area, and his clearance is denied, and he's not allowed in, and that's when we get Andrew Bicknell playing Robinson, who's like I guess like a higher up American, which again another UK actor playing an American.
I think other than Seagal, all the Americans are British.
Right, exactly. Exactly. I think you're absolutely right. Yeah. And actually the funny thing too is that he looks like Andrew Bicknell looks like he's like, like this old grizzled veteran of who's like been in the CIA for a long time. He's actually 5 years younger than Seagal. So they do a lot of work on Seagal to make him look as young as possible in these movies. And I think part of it too is that they have him play opposite actors his own age or younger, and have them look older, I guess. Maybe I don't know if maybe that's done on purpose or they kind of felt like he had that part. But yeah, he kind of gets a special pleasure in telling Seagal that he doesn't have the clearance to go into that area, which of course makes Seagal even more determined to find out the information. And that's where Lisa, or Tia, right? Lisa Lovebrand's character, Tia, his old flame, she has the clearance and she gets him the information he needs, and they learn kind of what this CTX is.
Yes. Oh, that does remind me. Yeah, she is the other American who's neither American nor British, because
Right.
she's Swedish.
Right, exactly. That's right.
So most of the Americans are British, other than Seagal, who is American, and her, who is Swedish.
Yeah. And the funny thing too is that Adam Crosdale, the Arun character, he grew up in Africa. So it didn't say if he's from South Africa specifically, but he's the one who's kind of he has like an English accent kind of. But he's also British. Right.
Like he grew up in Zimbabwe, but
okay.
He is also British.
So he was the one that was allowed. I guess the villains are allowed to be kind of whatever, a background, and so yeah, he's got the he's allowed to have his accent in there, and he's kind of playing that Eurotrash kind of baddie that is right at home in Romania, but seems a little out of place in France, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, no, I know what you mean, because like he does seem like Arun seems like an Eastern European baddie, and like they kind of styled him like Eastern European baddies in movies, which is kind of weird that they are supposed to be in France, and yet they've not made any effort to kind of make it look or feel French. It just feels very Romanian.
Right, exactly.
The whole production feels very so like. And why they decided to be like, oh no, it's France, I don't know, because like the way they've done it, and like it kind of makes more sense as well, because like originally it was going to be vampires, space aliens, and of course you relate vampire Transylvania, Romania,
Yes.
so it makes more sense for it to be in Romania. It doesn't make any anyway. I guess like fighting the logic of this film is an uphill struggle, but like
exactly. Yeah,
I thought I'd make that point.
Well, and another point actually, you talking about the Romania setting, it actually probably explains a lot of the location choices that Michael Koch made as well, right? That he wanted that vibe of, I think he wanted to kind of be like Blade crossed with like old Romania kind of thing, or Eastern European kind of thing, because you get the nightclub, you get that kind of stuff as well.
That's the other thing that like I thought throughout the movie, because this movie is like 2006.
Yeah.
And like the way the CTX users, or the former vampire space aliens turn CTX users, the way they're styled in terms of like their costume design a lot of leather. It's
Yes.
very Blade. It's very Underworld. It's
Yes.
like
That's another great one,
definitely
Underworld.
going for that vibe. Yeah.
Yeah, which again, this kind of goes back to the whole sauteed and wrong sauce aspect of the rework on this, because it feels like an easier sell, selling Seagal in a Underworld / Blade type movie. That feels like an easier thing that you could put on the tin and be like, buy this, than what we got here.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like, for me, that's what I was thinking throughout the movie as well. After reading the thing about Harvester, was like, obviously, I know Blade Trinity didn't go over well, but the Blade I know the Blade trilogy. You got Blade 2 that came out, I think, like 2002. That was really successful. And then I think the first Underworld came out in like 2003 or 2004. And like, and that was like a, not a critical hit, but like definitely there was enough there in terms of popular box office that they got a bunch of sequels, and so that stuff's still popular, and that's it's still kind of going on. I mean, I guess like this movie's a couple of years kind of late for that bandwagon. I think it would have hit bigger if it came out in like 2004 or something. So it's, but still, jumping off of that popularity of the Blade trilogy, of like the Underworld movies that are taking off, that makes sense. But this, to turn it into something else, while they've clearly stylized it to jump off the success of the Blade trilogy and Underworld movies, it doesn't make any sense. And you'd think like a distributor thinking with a commercial hat would be like, oh, that makes sense. I can see the films we're ripping off here, and like it's like, well, yeah, you've got that movie, and you want a movie that's kind of like that, but on a lower budget. What about this Harvester?
Yeah.
But no, they made Attack Force and made it about a made-up drug that nobody cares about. It's very bizarre, the decision the producers, distributors made, and it also feels counterintuitive, because you'd think that the commercial move would be to do what the original plan for the film was.
Yeah, and I mean, you make a great point, because the Underworld piece, I never considered this, that there's an overlap with those two, right? That you get, the first Underworld's in 2003, and then the second one's in 2006, and then Blade Trinity comes in 2004. And I mean, maybe that, so like, even if we were to say like, okay, Blade Trinity, there was like a fatigue factor because that movie didn't do as well. I mean, there was, I think, had Blade Trinity done better, they were even talking about doing a kind of a crossover between those movies. So like a Blade Underworld kind of combination movie, which I think would have done really well. But Underworld had multiple sequels after Blade Trinity. So I mean, there was an Underworld film that came out in 2006 even. So there could have even been kind of like an asylum mockumentary or mockbuster kind of element to it.
That's what I was thinking as well. Like, almost like that kind of, here's Transmorphers,
Right. Yeah, exactly. So, it's as we go through this movie, it does seem more and more puzzling. And of course, one of the things when going into the movie what happened, you start to see those moments where you can tell that they're trying to shoehorn things in. That it's like, so I don't know how far. Go ahead.
Oh no, the only other thing I was going to say was, actually, I just remembered that vampires were really big at this time, because as well as like what we were talking about with Blade and Underworld, I don't know if you remember, but they were really popular cult films, like the Russian films Night Watch and Day Watch.
Oh right, yes.
And like I know that's more of a kind of cult thing, it's not like massive box office, but again, it was just like this whole period, like vampires were just like really big, so you'd think that they'd really jump on the whole kind of vampire bandwagon.
Right. Yeah, it is. That's a good point. And I mean, the Twilight films were coming. And granted,
they were only a couple of years away. They started in 2008. You know?
Yeah. So there was a whole that like you said, that whole vampire thing. And I mean, I don't know that I'd go so far as to say this could have been a franchise of movies. I think that was
Maybe a stretch. Maybe a stretch.
Right, exactly. But at the very least, I mean, you could see probably where Seagal and Halpin were probably working off that mindset of like, let's do something in the vein of like a Blade or an Underworld, and they kind of start building this thing out. So it is fascinating that the distributors would look at that and say, no, we let's do this whole other thing where we kind of, completely rework the whole thing and try to make this into something completely different.
It's the early 90s in LA. The war on drugs is raging, and Detective John Bainbridge is the LAPD's secret weapon against crime. Former Special Forces in Nam, he's a cop on the edge. When he and his partner Geary uncover a potential human trafficking ring, it doesn't take long before John Bainbridge realizes this thing goes all the way to the top, which doesn't scare him. That just means they'll fall that much harder when he takes them down. Part send-up and part love letter to early 90s action films, Bainbridge will take you back to the golden days of Canon, PM Entertainment, and AIP. You can get it in paperback or on Kindle and Kindle Unlimited from Amazon. Follow the link in the podcast description. My newest novel, Don's House in the Mountains, is available now. It follows Don Veazey, who after 20 years has finally made it as a writer, going from an AP English teacher to richer and more famous than he ever could have imagined. In the process, his wife Lois, feeling alienated and resentful of her husband's success, has filed for divorce, forcing Don to move to a house in the White Mountains of New Hampshire. With time alone to reflect, he's able to see how his new wealth and fame has affected his life in ways he never expected. Maybe the biggest of these is his new house, which is bigger and nicer than anything he's ever had in his entire life, but the longer he lives there, the more he gets the sense that it might have magical powers. But that can't be right. A house can't have magical powers, can it? Pick up Don's House in the Mountains today. You can find it at Amazon in paperback and in Kindle. All right, we are back, and we're continuing our look here at Attack Force. So at this stage here, we've gotten to the point where, I guess, Seagal and Tia, his woman from the past, they've discovered that Arun is ready to poison the water supply with the CTX, and I guess it's like a 100-mile radius that they're doing. It's not all of France, Europe. I don't know if it's Paris. I'm not sure exactly what they're poisoning, but that's the plan they have.
I think it's Paris. I think it's the Paris water supply that they're poisoning. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and we've talked about this before. That Paris is one of those cities that like it's a character when it's used in a movie, and so it's so obvious that we're not in Paris. Again, that like it still kind of blows my mind. It's like when you watch like the Andy Sidaris films that take place in Paris, and they do things like they'll use like an establishing shot of like the Arc de Triomphe and the Eiffel Tower and stuff like that, but the rest of it's being shot in Dallas. At least with that, because you've got like women getting naked and toy trucks blowing people up and stuff like that. Like we're okay with it a bit, but it's like here, it's like I don't even know that we even needed it so much. But everybody tries to fake Paris. They don't. There is no such thing as fake Paris. It's either Paris or it's not Paris.
It's almost bemusing why people try and do it, because I don't know. I think we might have talked about this before, but if you think about like the history of cinema, and like the kind of most filmed cities, or the cities that people are most aware of that they've seen on film time and time again, Paris would be like in like the top 5. It would be like New York, LA, London, Paris, right. Probably.
Yes.
So like just make it somewhere else. Like
right.
Just don't pretend to be one of those 4 cities, because like because people who have never been to those cities have like an idea of them just because they've seen them in films so many times, again and again.
Yeah, and I do wonder with this movie, I am kind of curious if this movie originally was supposed to have taken place in Romania. Like if that was like another thing that was tacked on to this, that it was like the whole idea. And again, the fact that they do France, Europe blows my mind. I just don't know like where that, like what that even was there.
Yeah, like I don't know why they did that, but then I don't know why they did that for other things as well. Because like instead of like they just use comma Europe for everything. Like it was like U.S. Command Center, comma Europe, instead of like comma Paris. You know, like
Yeah.
you know, because again, and there's another place, then there's another building, the top secret building where they put comma Europe, and again you're like, wouldn't it make more sense to put the city? Makes it rather vague. Like, where in the European continent are we exactly?
Yeah, because Europe is not like a country, or like it's not like a kind of a location. You know, it's
Yes.
a continent. You know, it's like a huge mass of land that, you know, I guess the dividing line is the mountains in Russia and the isthmus in Istanbul. I don't know exactly, you know, but that's it's this whole big mass that has just all kinds of, you know, it's just like to being like Africa, which, to be fair, a lot of movies would do that. They would just be like, oh, Africa.
That's what I was going to say. That's what I was going to say. Maybe this movie is making a subversive, anti-colonialist message of being like, this is what you guys always do to Africa and treat it like it's like a country, you know, whereas instead it's like, I don't know, something like 54 separate nations, you know, like, so like maybe there's a secret subversive anti-imperialist message in this movie.
I never thought about that. You're that could be it. Could be the people who edited this were like, yeah, let's do, you know, because I wonder that, you know, there's like that map projection. There's like a kind of like a more real world map projection, because I guess like maps, you know, the kind of the more common maps that we see, Europe looks a lot bigger compared to Africa than it really is, and so people think like, oh yeah, Europe, you know, all these countries are really big, and Africa's, you know, relatively small in comparison. But then when you see like the real projection, it's like, no, Africa is massive, you know, compared to especially to, you know, to Europe west of Russia.
Yeah. Because like, yes, that's very true. Because traditional maps are confusing, because traditional maps like make the UK look massive, like way more, you know, like just way bigger than it is, because like a lot of the, you know, like a lot of the maps you got in the Western world came from the UK or whatever, and we're just like all the map makers in the UK are just like, yeah, the UK, we'll make it huge, and everybody will think it's a huge island, you know, but it's actually tiny. It's actually a really small place.
Yeah, I think the state that I grew up in Maine, which is the smaller of the states in the United States, I think it's like, I think the UK is twice the size of Maine. I think like from a length standpoint, and that's like going, I think, from like the bottom of you know, the channel, like all the way up to the very top of Scotland. Yeah, and so it is interesting, you know, from that standpoint, like thinking of it, like, you know, because it's one of the things that's interesting, like, you know, when I, you know, just kind of going off track on you know, English football, where you know, fans can go see their team play. You know, a lot of times they can do a day trip to go see their team play. And here in the U.S., where I live in Philadelphia, you can do day trips to like D.C. and New York to see teams play. But for the most part, you've got to fly somewhere and do an overnight or something like that, or probably spend a couple days there. You know, if you're lucky. But a lot of people can kind of take the train in the U.K. to go see, you know, like their team play in another stadium or something like that.
Oh, absolutely. And to give an indication for you, like if people are not overly familiar with UK geography, for your American listeners, right? So, I'm from Edinburgh. You know, I live in Wellington now in New Zealand, but like I'm from Edinburgh in Scotland. And Edinburgh is not in the north of Scotland, it's in kind of in the centre of Scotland. You know, like London, which is obviously the English capital, and the UK capital, is in the south of England, and the drive from London to Edinburgh, depending on traffic, I guess, is roughly about 7 hours, which that is covering quite a lot of the UK, you know.
Right, which, to give you a sense of that comparison, that's like from where I live in Philadelphia to where my family lives in Maine, like the very southern tip of Maine, and that's like just like a small, it's like you said, it's like a kind of a small little piece of America. Now, granted, there's a large population that you're driving through in America, going through that one section there, but yeah, that kind of, yeah, it's a good point. It's a good way to have that comparison. I remember when I did my school trip to England, you know, we we kind of did like everything between like Earl's Court in London all the way up to Edinburgh, and then we flew out of Glasgow, but we stayed in Edinburgh, and it was one of those things that I was kind of realizing it, that like our drives are not that long to go between place to place. Like the tour bus would take us, like we go like to Oxford, or we did a night in Hull, which it's this very interesting city in the UK. It was I think some other kids from another group that was traveling with us, they decided to get into it with some guys driving a RAV4, and suddenly like the whole tour was told to stay inside at our hotels for the rest of the night, so we wouldn't get into trouble there. But like we were, you'd be driving like an hour or two between places, and in America, it's like it's common. Where I live, it's not so not so bad. But like between like Dallas, Texas, and Houston, it's like a huge chunk of time, and that's like within the same state.
Yeah, no, I mean, like obviously, like America is way vastly bigger than the UK.
Yeah. The one that I always remember, because I used to teach English as a second language online, and I'd have students who'd be like, oh yeah, I'm going to LA for something, and I'd be talking to them about travel, and they'd be like, yeah, so I wanted to do a day trip to San Francisco, and I was like, you can't do that. California is huge, and San Francisco and LA are completely opposite ends of the state. You can't just drive up to San Francisco for the day and come home. That doesn't work that way, but it sounds like it's in the same state that it should be that easy to do. The other problem, of course, in America is there's no rail. I guess you could get a train to San Francisco, which would probably be a nice ride. But but it is, when you're a sports fan, it's like probably the best thing to just be able to bounce around to different places within the same day, and just go and come and be able to sleep in your own bed that night. Yeah.
It is still like a pain for people in the sense of like it can be done in a day trip, and you can get like, but talking about the English Premier League, for example, like if you are like I know your team's Arsenal, so if you are an Arsenal fan and you live in London and you are, say, like you're going on a away trip to, say, like Newcastle, like it is quite a long train journey, it is still like I don't know, like I guess 4 hours or a little bit, like I guess like what's train journey to Edinburgh's about 5 hours. I don't know, maybe 3.5, I guess. So I guess it's still quite a lot of travel, it's still like what would that be? That would be like 7 hours there and back, kind of just travel. But yeah, it is doable. I guess that is true. I guess even going London to Newcastle or whatever, I guess it's still doable to do in a day.
Yeah. Well, because what you have with London is almost kind of similar to what we have in Philadelphia, where you just have a lot of teams there, right? You'd be Fulham, Queens Park region, Chelsea, obviously, those, Tottenham, they'd all be in that area. But yeah, like thinking about it like that with a 3-hour trip one way, like for me, I would be looking at it as like, okay, I could do it like that. Like I'd get up very early in the morning and go to a Sunday game, go really early in the morning, go to the game, come back. But it'd be one of those things where like, well, I'm planning it out and I'm like buying all the tickets and everything. It sounds great. And then when the day actually comes to do it, it was like, oh, I'm going to be out for 15 hours today, technically, because of, all the different, why did I do that to myself? It's like, so it's like, but I would be doing it like where I'd be like, if I was in England, if I was Arsenal and going to to Newcastle to see a game, I would be looking at it as like, oh, I can do this. I won't have to get a hotel, right? I'll save all that money on the hotel and just go up and come back during the day. This is perfect. Okay, I can make this work. And then when that Sunday comes and I'm actually getting up in the morning to go and realizing what my day is going to be, it's like, oh, and I don't know if in the UK if they have the same rules about bringing bags into stadia, but they do in the United States, where depending on where you go, they don't want you to bring a bag in. So it's like a lot of times I'll get like these disposable plastic bags to carry my stuff in, and then like have to either like stuff it in my coat and kind of carry whatever you can't bring food or drink in either. So it's like that's always a planning part of it that's always difficult as well.
So like most stadiums I've been to, you can bring a bag in, but they generally search the bag.
Right.
And like you can't bring food or drink in.
Yeah.
Like that's the case. For sure. So yeah, like they generally I think there's rules on how big a bag, like like a woman bringing a handbag, that's fine. Like if you brought a big backpack, they'd probably turn you away.
Right.
Like so there's rules about the size of bags you can bring in, but there's certain bags you can bring in for sure. And then also, like, I guess the other thing that annoys people often is that, like, in football games you can't drink in the stadium. Like, you can't, like, you can't drink in the ground, or you can't bring drinks into the ground. You can drink on the kind of concourse, but you can't drink in the stadium.
Oh, so like if you get a beer, you can't bring it to your seat.
No, you can't bring it to your seat. Like, basically, this is the thing, because of, like, the football hooliganism in the 80s, like, this is a thing that they brought in football stadiums. It's different in rugby. But, basically, if you get, like, a drink at halftime, you have to basically, down that pint in, like, 15 minutes and then get back to your seat.
That's amazing.
Yeah, and that's pretty much across the board in the UK, as far as I'm aware, in terms of football games. Other sporting events, you can bring drinks into the stadium. But in terms of football games, because of all the troubles of the past, you can. So you just have to, like, drink in the pub beforehand. Then, if you're desperate to get a drink during the game, you have to buy it at halftime. And, like, the queues are massive. So, like,
of course,
the queues are massive, and then you get your pint, and, like, obviously you've waited like 5 or 10 minutes, so you've got like about 5 minutes to, like, just down your pint and then go back to your seat. Luckily, I don't drink anymore, so I'm fine. Yeah. But, like,
no, but that's crazy. Because I mean, to give you the difference in America, right, is that if so basketball and hockey are a little different because they're indoor, but, like, baseball and football that are outdoors. I don't know about football because I've been to some NFL football games and this hasn't been the case, but with baseball in particular, there are vendors who walk through the stands and sell beer. And they so you don't have to leave your seat. They come over and you can buy the beer. Now, it's usually the watered down light beers that you get from those. The nicer beers are way more expensive. I know my buddy, we went to a base. I usually don't get beer at the games myself either because it's so expensive. But he got like I don't know, it's like a German beer that he hadn't had in a while, or German style beer, and it was like $17. And he couldn't believe it. He was like, whoa. But they'd already opened it and everything, because they open it for you. And that's what's one piece is that they open it for you, so you have to drink it there. But the rules are more about, like, how late you can drink at the game.
Like, we should get back to the film in a second.
Right.
Do you still get the bottle?
So, no, it's cans for the most part, or there'll be, like, those, like, metal bottles. It's really interesting. My brother and I went to an NFL game. They had, like, metal versions of the bottle. So I guess so they can't break.
Okay.
Yeah.
So again, because, like, there is assumptions in the UK that football fans are scum.
Right.
Like, they will open the bottle and they will pour it into a plastic cup.
Yeah.
And throw the can and pour it into a plastic cup because, again, there is an assumption that football fans are scum and will start throwing things. Well,
that is true.
We just have it in a plastic cup.
No, American fans do the same thing. So that's why, one, they take the cap off of it. Because there are situations where that's happened, where, like, fans will throw bottles onto the field. One of them was, I think it was in Cleveland for an NFL game. They had these plastic bottles. So they had a plastic version of the bottle. They thought, okay, plastic's fine, right? Nobody can break the plastic, so it won't cause any problems. And no, they got mad at the kicker or somebody like that. And they just all started throwing these plastic bottles on the field. And everyone was like, why are you giving these people plastic bottles? Like, do that. But I remember my brother and I, we went to a game that was so cold. It was like, 0 Celsius. It was right around the freezing mark. And we got these Bud Lights, which are mostly water. And I remember, like, my lip almost froze because it was metal. And when I was drinking it, it felt like there was ice inside of it. The game was so cold. But yeah, they have, like, they've come up with new ways to get around it. So, but for the most part, they prefer it that way too, to, like, give it to you in a cup, because there's not much you can do with a cup.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, one last thing I'll say about this before we go back to the movie. As recently, the team I grew up with, Heart of Midlothian, who are a team from Edinburgh, there was an incident at, like, our main rivals are the Edinburgh rivals Hibs, and there was an incident where somebody threw a pie at our main striker, Lawrence Shankland. And Lawrence Shankland caught the pie, took a bite out of the pie, and threw it back into the crowd, which is the most Scottish football thing that has ever happened.
That is amazing. That is amazing. We have an English pie, or we have a British pie place here in Philadelphia, like near where I live in Philadelphia. But of course, like I could imagine, like getting like a Cornish pasty or something like that, and just like tossing it. I remember watching a game, an EPL game on TV, where Steve McManaman was eating a steak and kidney pie that he had gotten from the thing there. So that is amazing, though, to just like catch it, take a bite, and just without because especially with footballers nowadays, right, where they're so like conscious of like making sure they only put like certain foods in their bodies, to just be like you must be like so in the moment, right? Like you're, like you said, like the kind of the most Scottish thing that could happen in a game.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's peak Scottish football. But I guess we should start talking again about Attack Force.
Right. So with our cast, for the most part, from the UK, they're now in France/Europe, France, Europe. We're I guess we're at the point now where Arun has confronted Tia about like her joining him, I guess, because they had worked together in the past on this project, right, with the CIA, and she says no, she's not going to work with him. Is this when he murders her, or is that later in the film? I'm trying to think if maybe we're already at that point.
Tia.
Yeah.
Oh
right.
No, Tia's murdered later on in the movie.
Right. Okay.
That's Tia's murder comes like in the kind of finale at the cathedral.
That's right.
So no, this is they meet up, and she's fine out of this situation. Although, I've managed to find a thread from our previous football conversation back to this film. So one of the things that amused me about this is that most of the British actors who are pretending to be Americans are putting on a kind of vague kind of, yes, I'm American kind of accent, I don't know where in America I come from, but you can tell by this intonation that I'm vaguely American, right? They're doing that. So all right, okay. But pretty much the exception to this is the actor who plays the Admiral is an actor called Michael Cathcart, who is Scottish, and he actually is one. Star Wars nerds might know that he voiced Bib Fortuna in Return of the Jedi. But he is not doing an American accent at all. He is just using his gruff Scottish voice of just being like, yes, I'm an American Admiral here, you're like, no, you're not. You very much sound Scottish, which is what you are.
Right. And I do kind of wonder with these roles, because it's interesting, the difference between the UK actors who are still speaking English as a first language versus the Romanian actors who, they're coming to English as a second language. And so, in some cases, maybe they do need to be dubbed. Maybe their English isn't quite good enough. But I do wonder, like for example, with these sort of more international stories that are being told here, like how pertinent it really, or how much they absolutely have to have an American accent to play these parts. Or I wonder too, for the actors themselves, if it's kind of like a thing where they're getting tens of thousands of dollars for a few days shoot, and they get to practice their American accent for a little bit. Maybe, I don't know.
I've just remembered. I've got his name slightly wrong. It's Michael Carter.
Oh yes, yeah.
And they're like, as the Admiral, and he's just. Like, it's not full on kind of a right pal, but but it's not far off from being as Scottish as that.
Right. Well, and I think the thing is that for American audiences, and see, this is interesting. I talk about myself as an American and sort of like my experiences with other people, with other Americans growing up, that somebody who has an accent from another English speaking country, pretty much everything other than Canadian, right? Because Canadians sound pretty close to Americans, so it's like not anything there. But there's a I don't know if novelty is the right word, because there's sort of, especially in America, where we have that sort of post-colonial thing where Europe is seen as sort of like the more cultured place, and America is seen as the new upstarty kind of thing, but like with no real basis of anything. Americans, especially when they started making money, started looking to Europe for like, what should we do as upper class citizens? And so a lot of times when especially like, people from the UK or from Ireland come to America, there's kind of a sense of like no matter what the accent is, of sort of being a level above. Like there are a lot of Americans who kind of see them as like, oh yeah, this person, is someone to pay deference to. Now, granted, there are, other Americans who are just like, oh, well, I don't like any foreigners, and so it doesn't matter, that they're not going to care either way. But I do think there's enough of that I think people watching these movies would be like, oh, a Scottish guy, and someone with an English accent or whatever, they would prefer that. I know this comes up a lot with Scott Adkins, where a lot of Americans that I talk to would rather he just use his English accent than speak with an American accent or a Russian accent or whatever he does. Whereas I think there's another element of it where they're like, no, I want my heroes to be American, and that's a better approach to it. So it is interesting with these movies, where they make that decision or where that comes in, or again, I wonder too if the actors themselves decide on it. If it's like that Michael Carter's just like, I'm not doing an American accent, or this is the best I can give you.
I don't. Yeah, I'm not sure about that. I don't know if like the actors are like, well, this is what I'm giving you.
Yeah.
Because like, there is certain actors who again, I'll use another other Scottish examples, where they just don't care. It doesn't matter what actors, it doesn't matter what where the character is supposed to come from. They'll just do their Scottish voice. Sean Connery was like that. Gerard Butler is like that as well. Gerard Butler, Gerard Butler's like, yes, I'm from Sparta. Like, no, you're from Glasgow, mate. Like, clearly.
right, exactly. Well, because then like you've got like Gordon Ramsay, who's very popular here in the U.S., who I believe he's from Edinburgh.
Yeah.
But his accent is very neutral. Kind of almost like
he doesn't have a strong Scottish accent. You don't detect it that much. Yeah. Could be from anywhere.
Yeah, I do wonder but I wonder if when he's not doing his shows for Fox or for for the BBC, if like when he's sort of off camera, if suddenly it's he sounds different. I don't know if it's but I wonder too, like with actors like Sean Connery or something like that, like that there's like maybe two versions of a Scottish accent, because it's like kind of like with me, where I've got my New England accent, but when I'm talking, it's more like a region-free American accent. And so, I wonder if there's if some of the actors have a different version of their Scottish accent that they use when they're not acting in a film.
I think like some actors, and I guess like there's many different accents from Scotland, and I guess some actors, particularly people who come from Glasgow, like, because it's such a strong accent, they tend to retain their accent. I mean, it's the same with like Gerard Butler's obviously from Glasgow. Billy Connolly is also from Glasgow, and again, Billy Connolly just talks like Billy Connolly. You watch a stand-up show of Billy Connolly, that's his voice. If you watch him in interviews, that's his voice. You watch him in movies, that's his voice. It's and it's the same with like the likes of Gerard Butler. So I don't know. I mean, I guess there's some Scottish actors who do accents sometimes. I know Ewan McGregor, he does an American accent sometimes. And but again, even then, like Ewan McGregor, James McAvoy, David Tennant, quite often they're just using their actual voice. I mean, sometimes with those three examples, they do try different accents, but maybe Scottish people are just like, nah.
Right, exactly. Well, that's a good point. That's a good point, because I didn't even think about James McAvoy. Great, because he in in the X-Men movies, right, where he's being, Professor Xavier, right, where he's essentially his accent in that he's trying to do his best Patrick Stewart, I think.
Yes, he is for the most part, and I think like he maintains that. I was because I've been listening to your kind of Marvel movie kind of extras and stuff like that.
Oh yes, yeah.
Yeah, that is quite fun because and I do think that he manages to keep that accent most times. You do hear the odd Scottish slip in sometimes, and I think First Class is really funny because they had to do reshoots,
yes.
and like for most of the film, Michael Fassbender manages to keep his Ian McKellen impersonation, but obviously for the reshoots, he forgot what his impersonation was and just went back to being Irish.
right. Yes. Yeah. Right. Well, because there's that thing too where it's like, think about like the second Godfather, where it's like, Robert De Niro doesn't look like a young Marlon Brando, but he does a great job playing a young, Vito Corleone. And so, like, with Fassbender, it's like you said, like, he has the impression that he does of Ian McKellen, but then it's also like this idea that he does a great job playing what we would think like a young Magneto played by Ian McKellen would be. Which is really cool. I mean, I read that McAvoy, he shaved his head when he first got the X-Men First Class gig, and they were like, no, you're the old Xavier before he goes bald, and so he had to like get hair extensions and stuff like that.
Oh, yeah, right.
Yeah, but yeah, you're right about that. I didn't even think that, because with Fassbender, I was just like so like in love with like the outfits and stuff that he was wearing, because he just is like just such a great 60s Magneto. He just like he's got like when he goes to Argentina to kill the two Nazi guys, like that outfit and everything is just so.
Oh. I have to say, I know exactly what you mean. Like, Fassbender looks spectacular in a polo neck.
Yes.
He pulls a polo neck off so well. This is one of my main memories of the movie.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
I actually think that could have been interesting if they kept it as what it was supposed to be, where it was supposed to be Magneto's origins, and it was supposed to be just like, Magneto Nazi Hunter. Like, I think like I could have seen a whole movie of Magneto Nazi Hunter. I think that would have been fun. But yeah. Anyway, I guess Attack Force, right?
Right, exactly. Well, it's funny because you could say X-Men First Class is similar to Attack Force in the sense that, right, like they wanted First Class to be X-Men Origins Magneto, but X-Men Origins Wolverine was so bad that they scrapped the whole idea. Yeah, they wanted to start over. And it's a situation where it kind of, the changes that they made, it would have been interesting to see what we would have gotten there with that movie. Kind of like with this, where it would have been interesting to see what we would have gotten with the original cut. I don't know if we need to like have a hashtag Koish cut for Attack Force.
Yeah, let's start that, and like nobody on the internet will know what we mean, right? Hashtag Coach Cut. Everybody else is like, huh?
Exactly, because even the people who've seen Attack Force probably don't know that the director was Michael Koish, right? So
That's true.
Exactly.
That's true.
Yeah.
I don't know, and I don't know what else would we hashtag Release the Harvester. Like,
right, exactly.
I don't know if that makes much sense either. People will be like, what are you talking about? Some sort of farming thing? Like,
right, The Harvester. That would be actually a good point. What is that movie, The Harvester? Yeah, the funny thing would be like people who ask about it who aren't like fans of these kinds of movies, who are just like people that we follow on Twitter who kind of come from other backgrounds or whatever, and you explain to them what it is, and they'd be like, oh, okay, well, good luck with that. It's like, all right, that sounds good.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So yeah, I guess like, I guess like, in the film after that, we just get we kind of go through the motions. It feels like we do like the same. There is a chunk of the film where we do like the same setup twice.
Yes.
Where like basically. Marshall and his team are at a location. The first time they're at the location, they managed to capture Reyna, who is the CTS addict who killed off the three guys originally. So they manage to capture her in very funny fashion because, like, Raina is so powerful that she manages to throw Tia through 2 separate walls, and yet Seagal manages to manhandle her in like 2 seconds and knock her out. And then they go to a location, and then like a strike team tries to get them, but the strike team gets there too late, and we have this. So we have this whole setup of like these conversations about the strike team going to get them, and then like the next segment of the movie is the exact same thing again, where they go to another location. There is another kind of meeting with the admiral and his sidekick Werner, who's sometimes called Warner, is sometimes referred to as Warner, but his name is Werner, and he's mostly referred to as Werner, but sometimes people forget and call him Warner. And then we get another bunch of meetings and another strike team attack. But this time the strike team get there in time and we have like a bit of a battle. But like, so we have like this kind of rinse and repeat situation where we're like, I feel like we've seen this before, just in a slightly different location.
It feels like we're just adding scenes for Seagal to sit in a chair while people at the head of a table, while people suggest things, and he says things like, "All right, we got to go into and like, you know, like that kind of thing." And of course, the best part about these scenes is like, you know, we're used to seeing these in Seagal movies, right? Where the plan gets laid out, and he's like, "All right, we know what we got to do then, people. Let's go do it," you know. And it's like everybody gets up except for him, right? He just sits there and I'll get ready to move. But what's great about these scenes is that now we get this crazy overdubbing that's happening at the same time, where the things that Seagal's saying, sometimes they're in his voice, sometimes they're in this other person's voice. That's clearly not, like, the lips aren't matching. It doesn't make it, you know. So it adds like this other layer to it. And like you said, the fact that we get 2 of them, it's almost like Seagal needed 2 moments to be able to sit at the head of a table and tell everybody what to do. But we're, like you said, we're kind of going over the same ground twice in a row.
Yeah, absolutely. So, you know, like, because so much of this film he is sitting down. Like, there's the first section of the film where he is sitting for like what seems to be many hours in a bar, in a hotel bar, and then before the first attempted strike team attack, he is sitting in a big metal chair in a lab, and then we go to another location. It's kind of like a mansion house where he's sitting in a very big posh chair. You know, and like, I love that, and this is where the awkward, sexy hug happens. Where he's like, he loves sitting down so much that Tia is like, "Can I have a word with you?" And he's like, "Yeah, you can talk here." And then she's like, "No, a word like in private." And you can almost feel the sigh of like, "Oh, I'm gonna get out of this chair."
Right.
You know, like,
yeah, and the funny thing is that the character of Dwayne looks at both of them, and I think the look is technically supposed to be, "Oh, what would she want to say to him in private that I can't be around for?" But really, the look is more like, "Is he going to get up, or do I need to get up?" It's like,
absolutely. It's like, do I have to give up this chair? It really doesn't look like he wants to get out of his comfy. It's a comfy chair. Like, these posh chairs are comfy. Wow.
Yeah. There's one other thing I wanted to mention too about these setups that come is there's a scene where he talks to Andrew Bicknell's character Robinson on the phone, and he calls them. Bicknell answers the phone and he goes, "Oh, Marshall, how are you doing?" He's like, "Oh, you recognize my voice?" And I'm like, "Yeah, he does. None of the rest of us recognize your voice because it doesn't sound like you at all."
Absolutely. I have to say, like, the thing is, because like Robinson is like set up as like this kind of shadowy figure, CIA figure, like pulling strings and all this kind of stuff to try and cover up the dirty secrets of the US, dabbling in CTX and stuff like that. Like, basically all of the deaths of like major characters in this movie are anticlimactic.
Right.
Robinson is just like unlike most shadowy kind of spy figures, goes with the strike team,
Right. Yes.
and then just gets shot in the head, and then that's him.
Yes. Well,
And like this is like a recurring thing. We'll get to other deaths in a bit when we get to the finale in the cathedral. But like all the other deaths are like that as well. They're just like, well, they're dead now.
right. Yes. Where in contrast that with Shadow Man, right? Where we get, the father-in-law who we, spoiler alert if you haven't listened to our Shadow Man episode, the father-in-law is the one who's like kind of the mastermind behind everything. He gets the Seagal Chi death, which
That's right.
We could have used more. Exactly. Yeah. So we could have used more Chi deaths there, but it's almost like, again, like they're kind of shoehorning deaths into the movie, the way that they're kind of afterthoughts like that.
Yeah, but like I say, none of the deaths like have like any. Well, there's no breathing space.
Right.
There's no weight to any of the deaths.
Yeah.
Like once we get to the kind of cathedral scene, like basically, Werner, who's been a thorn in Seagal's side this whole time, basically the Admiral and Werner have been trying to kill Seagal with these strike teams or whatever because he's exposing their dirty secrets or whatever. But then, because of like the danger of like Arun and the Queen, who we've not got to yet, but we'll talk about in a minute, and because of the danger of them, they have to team up, and then like Seagal does like a swinging dick thing where he's like, yeah, Werner, you should come be part of the strike team, clearly knowing that Werner's going to die,
Right.
because like he's not like a combat guy, he's like an intelligence guy, so as predicted, Werner dies in like 2 seconds,
Right.
and like and it's not even like a kind of like a fist pump moment of like, yeah, like that shady dirty guy's got his comeuppance. It's just like a kind of like, yeah, he's dead, whatever. Yes. And then Tia, who's ostensibly the love interest, she gets her throat slit by Arun,
Right.
and again, it's just like that happens in a blink of an eye. Seagal like comes across the body or whatever, and it's just like, oh, okay, all right, she's dead now. That's a shame, I guess. And then, and his best friend at the very, very end, his best friend Dwayne, he also dies kind of heroically fighting a bunch of guys. But again, the death again doesn't really have any impact. So all the deaths are just really throwaway.
Yeah.
And I know like you can't expect too much from films like this, but at least like give some weight to some of the like what have been the main characters in the movie, like dying. You give some breathing space. At least have like at least one Seagal reaction shot of being like, oh wow, that's kind of sucks. Like doesn't have to be much, but like. But nothing matters in this movie. Nothing matters at all.
I wonder if there were better death scenes in the earlier version, and the way that they cut these together. I mean, I wonder how many of these deaths were even reshoots. That they just like redid them. I mean, the funny thing too about the Werner thing is they when he's told that he has to join Seagal's team, right, and he's very sheepish about it. His reply is, I don't have any clothes, I think, right? And it was like a dubbed over, I don't have any clothes, which was like the best excuse. But I wonder what his real excuse was, because that was definitely dubbed over there.
I don't know. I feel like, I don't know, maybe we're giving Harvester too much credit, but right. I feel like the line isn't as dumb as that. Right. Like of all the options, that we're scanning down, surely that wasn't, it wasn't as equally dumb.
Right. Yeah. I'm trying to think, like you said, I think we're giving Harvester too much credit. Which makes sense with that. But by the same token, it's like what we're seeing here with this film. I don't know. Like when we get into this final fight scene here, I mean, one of the things that blew my mind, or not blew my mind, but one of the things that I keyed on in my review was the fact that people could easily be thrown through not just like plaster walls. Like, it's one thing when it's plaster walls. I mean, it's still pretty rough to get thrown through a plaster wall, I would imagine. But you feel like it breaks away a little bit easier. In this case, when we're in the cathedral, these are stone walls that people are being thrown through. And no matter how much the stone is like maybe old and the cement in between it is maybe not in the best shape, getting thrown through that and hitting those stones would hurt anybody. But, people seem to get thrown through them pretty easily. And not only that, but Seagal, without taking the CTX, seems to have the ability to throw people through the walls as well.
I think that is one of those things, like, I think like it happens in like comic book movies a lot as well, where people get like thrown against walls or thrown through like kind of brick stone walls and stuff like that, and then kind of like get up and brush themselves off and like they're okay. Even kind of human characters, not like not like your kind of superhuman kind of characters. And like. Yeah, you would have thought that like they'd either be very hurt or like break their back or whatever. But no, they just get up and move on. And again, I think like that is like something that is very funny about this film, where there's certain characters, like we saw with the Rainer character. Again, Seagal's character Marshall Lawson like has a fight with Arun, and then like later has a fight with the Queen. And like even the fight with Arun, again we see Arun like throw people through brick walls, and then like Seagal deals with them in like 2 minutes. Like and Arun's supposed to have like this superhuman strength, and Seagal is supposed to just be like a guy, yes, an expert fighter guy, but still like just not have superhuman strength, just like have normal strong person strength, like...
right. Well, because they give him these blades, and they say that the blades are somehow like connected to him, and I don't even understand how that worked, but they were like integrated with it or something like that, so that like so he could like slash out very quickly, I guess, with quicker reflexes. But that didn't explain how someone who has like lightning class, the ability to like essentially move so fast that like if you are looking at them in one direction and you turn around and go in the other direction, they can run in front of you in a flash. They have that ability to be that fast. Yet Seagal, who wouldn't, no matter how nice these blades are that are attached to his arms, would not have the ability to like move it, and no matter how fast he can do that slap chop thing with his hands, he technically shouldn't have the ability to do it, but he does, right? His character, he has that ability.
Yeah, absolutely. It's kind of wild. Like I know, like these are action movies. We've got to like stretch our suspension of belief or whatever. And I'm usually fine with that. I'm usually the person who says, when people are saying, well, that wouldn't happen in the real world or whatever, I'm like, what are you talking about? It's a Fast and the Furious movie. Of course, physics don't matter. Usually I'm that guy, but like even me, who is willing to suspend his belief for tons of things, I'm like, how is Seagal managing to throw people through brick walls? How are these like superhuman strength killers, killing machines, just like being knocked off by Seagal in like without breaking a sweat? I mean, he breaks a sweat a little bit when he fights the Queen, but like, who's supposed to be the most powerful of all, I guess. But just that, everybody else he's fine with it, and the rest of his team are just getting murdered by these people because they're at such a disadvantage, because like they've got normal, strong human strength versus like this superhuman strength. So it's baffling. It's baffling.
Because I think the difference between what you were saying with the Fast and Furious movies and this movie is the Fast and Furious movies, despite how ridiculous the things are that happen in the movies, they do follow a certain set of rules that almost allow for those crazy things to happen. It's like, it's like nobody can, like they don't change the rules mid-game, I guess is what it is. Where this feels like you're changing the rules, like you're saying, like, okay,
I think so. I think that's the case. I think you're exactly right in what you're saying. You can establish a wacky reality, but that wacky reality has to exist for all characters. Basically, what is happening here is like the wacky reality of like these superhuman strength drug addicts and like the things that they can do against normal human beings only exist for all the other characters who are not Seagal, and Seagal exists outside of it.
Right.
So he can still deal with these characters as if they're just like the normal kind of martial art kind of or like special unit agents or whatever that he usually deals with.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So now the Queen gets introduced. So now I'm wondering if the Queen was a grafted on concept as well, because she comes in at the end. We find out that she's the one, I guess, pulling the strings of Arun. Does that sound right?
Yes, she is pulling the string. We do see her earlier on in the movie.
Oh, right. Okay.
We see her we get a scene with her kind of mid-movie with Arun. There's like a couple of 1 or 2 very brief scenes with Arun kind of mid-movie where we kind of see that I think she does feel like a tacked-on character just because we see so little of her throughout the movie before this final scene. Although the one thing that I do want to mention about the Queen is, now I don't know who the costume designer was on this particular production, or who decided who's wearing what costumes, but the Queen is costumed in a spectacularly pervy way.
Yes.
So we see her mid-movie, where basically she is wearing the tightest leather trousers you've ever seen on a person, and she's wearing a fur coat with what appears to be no bra. She's wearing it kind of. She's got 2 buttons done, and then no other buttons. So it's it must be taped. The coat must be taped to her breast, because she's just got this completely cleavage showing kind of fur coat. And then at the end, for the end fight, she is wearing a very tight, very almost see-through tank top, and the smallest leather. So yeah, that's her costuming for the final battle, this this small tight tank top, the very very light fabric, and this very small tight leather mini skirt, which
Just perfect to fight in. Yes.
Which is perfect fighting gear. Really, and so I mean, and I don't want to be disrespectful for anybody, but I do feel like this particular actress was not necessarily may have been hired for her looks, and she's very very good looking lass. I will say, no offense to her, but yes, I do. I mean, she couldn't have been costumed more perfectly if they tried. I don't think.
I do wonder if that's a Seagal thing, because there's a lot of these Eastern European films he's made that have women in similar outfits. I mean, most of the time, right? It's the strip club, right? They're at the strip club and they see these women in these outfits like that. But you also see it in these kind of circumstances, whether it's it's a baddie of some sort or something. And I wonder if there's any piece there where he has any input into how the costumes look.
It wouldn't surprise me. It definitely wouldn't surprise me for sure.
So one of the things that I thought, going back to your idea about the the point you were making about the afterthought deaths, is we also have an afterthought survivor, which made no sense as well. That there's this man who's of Asian descent, and I say, and the reason why I mentioned that he's of Asian descent is because he's the only person within the group. So he's you recognize him right away that he's there. He is on the team
this is the first time we see him in the movie. Is he shows up with the team to go, take out the baddies here, and he survives at the end with Seagal. And Seagal kind of makes a point of sort of lifting him up and helping him out as they escape. Like, he's known this guy for the entire 90 minutes of the movie, and he's like got some kind of significance that he would want to help him out there. I wonder if this guy was in the movie in the earlier iteration, if he was in it for more. And that's why there's this significance with the fact that he gets saved, because this is your classic red-shirted ensign going to the planet, right, in Star Trek. This is the guy that should be getting killed off in the movie, and he's not. He survives, and there's this big show of Seagal helping him escape the cathedral after the queen is killed.
Yeah, it's quite strange, that one, yeah, for sure. Because I was like you, I was very taken aback by this character. I think it's called Naboo. He is treated as almost with equal significance to Dwayne, who's been his best friend throughout the movie. And so that was confusing because, yes, like you say, we've never seen this character until like the planning for the final assault on this cathedral, and so he just is seen as just like a random member of the team, really. But then once we get into the kind of final showdown when Seagal takes on the Queen, and then Naboo and Dwayne go off to fight other kind of CTX addicts and stuff. They're treated as like they're like a trio that have been together and have been through many missions together and whatever. Where it's just like, but we've just watched a whole movie where it's just been like Marshall and Dwayne, and that's it. Like, there's been no Naboo up until this point. Like,
right.
I'm not quite sure what's going on.
Well, and also to your point, you talk about the padding in the film, right? That with the way this thing was re-edited, they were duplicating scenes a lot to pad things out, and we get a lot of I think there's like one or two shots of Naboo, like either like entering a room and sort of surveying things or looking shocked. It's like there's like a shot of him that's used multiple times throughout that end battle, that whole kind of end scene in the cathedral. That it's just there for the padding. It's just they just kind of loop him in the film a bunch of times.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think, yes, there is quite a significant amount of padding in this film. I think, I don't know how you felt about it, but I think the worst padding in the movie was just before we get to the final fight in the cathedral, where we just have several minutes, I'm not even kidding, several minutes of just watching cars and jeeps and tanks drive down roads, circling the cathedral, driving up to the cathedral, and it just goes on and on and on, and we just see battalions of it seems like hundreds of troops are going there, just like car after car after car, and there's a tank, and then there's a kind of jeep thing, and another car, and you're just like, how long is this going to... Am I just going to watch traffic for, for the rest of the movie, or...
Yeah, and that, because it's funny, because think of Mystery Science Theater 3000. They always make jokes about like real time, driving or something like that. And you think of the lowest budget movies, right? You see that you'll see a real time somebody driving into a driveway and getting out and walking to a house, and it all happens in real time, and you're like, did we need all of that? Couldn't we have cut some of that out? But the thing too that gets me about this is, again, this movie was 96 minutes or 95 minutes long, right? It was a little over an hour and a half, and so I don't even know that this padding was necessary. Like, for example, this vehicle padding that you're talking about here, that's just showing all of these vehicles. It's like the amount of time, like you said, it is a good 5 or 6 minutes of this 96-minute runtime that it was so unnecessary. I mean, we could have just from talking in the one scene where they're all in the room planning it, we would know the force that would be coming there, and you could see them all just get to the location at one point. Though I do wonder if there was a scene of them getting to the location and it was much fewer cars, and they just had to, I guess, layer these padding sequences together.
Yeah. I mean, I do feel like we get all the padding in this movie, because we have like the vehicle padding. We have like a lot of exposition padding.
Right.
We have a number of establishing shots padding of just like establishing shots of the cathedral and like the building where the first strike team attack takes place, and the command centers and all this kind of stuff. So a lot of that kind of padding as well. So we get we get kind of like. The kind of Neapolitan of padding, like we get all sorts of different flavors of padding.
Right. You can kind of stack them with the ice cream and give them to everybody to have it all there. Yeah, and I mean, that worst kind of I've talked to directors, like I know Albert Pyun talked about with his urban menace movies that he made. So it was like Urban Menace, Wrecking Crew, and Corrupt were the three movies he made. He shot them in Romania with like a lot of rappers. So he had like Ice-T, I think Ice Cube was. I can't remember if Ice Cube was, but Snoop Dogg was definitely Snoop Dogg, not Ice Cube, but Snoop Dogg was in them. Fat Joe, Big Punisher. There were a lot of guys that were in these that were popular at the time. He brought them out to Romania and made these three movies. And I guess Air France lost a crate of film, which I guess is not a problem nowadays. Now when you're shooting everything on digital, you don't have to worry about reels being lost. So Albert Pyun had to, the distributors demanded a movie from him. So he had to cut what he had from the other two crates of film to make three movies. And he said, obviously if he had it to do over again, he'd do other techniques or things like that. But it's like, when you're in a situation where you lose a crate of film, yes, you've got to use these padding techniques of like, the same shot over and over again, a bunch of close-ups of people, that kind of stuff. But this kind of just goes back to the fact that this didn't have to happen, right? That if they'd just taken the movie that was given to them, I mean, I just, like we talked about, we can't imagine it being worse than what we got here. But it required all of these techniques to get a fully fleshed out 90-minute movie that it feels like it couldn't have been harder than what they ended up getting.
Yeah, for sure. Again, we might be giving Harvester way too much credit, but it just seemed inconceivable that it could be any worse than this movie.
Well, because I mean, could Harvester have been so much worse than Shadow Man, right? For all of Shadow Man's flaws, it's at least you for the most part you're getting Seagal's voice, right? And if it's
that's true.
And if it's not Seagal's voice, at least whoever's doing the ADR is dubbing something that's synced with his voice. And Ava Pope, I think I think as an actress she was a little bit better than the stars they had here. But I think even with the stars that they had here, I don't think they necessarily needed Ava Pope. I mean, there's definitely some continuity issues. There were some pieces that were uneven, tonally, plot-wise in Shadow Man, but it's not like what we're getting here. It's like the fact that this is, that we're comparing Shadow Man like it's this beautiful piece of cinema that art class, film classes are going to be using as their model for years. It's not anything like that.
I mean, to be fair, film classes really should be using that opening scene, the exploding watermelon scene.
Yes.
It's, as I said in the Shadow Man episode, peak cinema.
That's a great point. That's a fantastic point. Because I mean, that's the other thing too about this movie is that. Yeah, I mean, maybe that's the problem, right? Maybe, like you said, we're trying to guess, like, we're thinking Harvester was a better movie than it was just because this movie was so bad. I mean, who knows? I mean, based off that watermelon thing, we don't know that maybe Seagal and Halpin, like, really, got into some really good meds and, really just started writing all kinds of crazy stuff where it was like, hey, we got away with the watermelon thing. What else can we do? And maybe there is something that's just completely ludicrous and just ridiculous that they got. And the distributors are like, we can't put this out. We can't, I don't even want to speculate on what that could have been. But you make a great point with the watermelon thing that the watermelon thing did see the light of day. That is in a movie. So I guess, they could get crazy, I guess.
Yeah, for sure. And I think like the part of the problem with this movie, beyond the fact it's been hacked to death and it's poorly edited and like it's all over the place and it's full of padding and all that kind of thing, is like there's nothing to kind of, we've watched plenty of bad Seagal movies before, as part of this podcast or as, just for fun. And the thing about it is, like, it doesn't even have any of, like, the kind of redeeming features of, like, a lot of bad Seagal movies, where, we get, like, kind of fun, like, we get a little bit of, like, the kind of badass info dump of what a badass the character is. But, like, there's other ones that go, like, more whole hog in that, and, like, that's always fun. And, like, often, even if, like, a Seagal film's really boring, if you get, like, a couple of fun, slappy fights, and a couple of people getting thrown through panes of glass, you're always like, well, that's something that I like from a Seagal film. And like with the exploding watermelon, if there's, like, something like that that's just, like, really super goofy, which happens a lot in Seagal movies, again, that's, like, something to be like, well, the movie's terrible, but I really enjoyed that thing. Whereas, like, this, as well as just being a poor movie, on top of that, it doesn't have any of the fun goofiness that, like, that we've come to expect from a lot of these Seagal movies. So, and it doesn't even have any kind of fun, like, martial arts stuff or fun fights or anything, which, again, is usually one of the kind of redeeming factors of, like, a lot of these Seagal movies. So it just drags. Everything drags, and, like, there's nothing. And all the fights are really poorly shot as well. And it's just, there's nothing really to recommend here. It really is one of, even by Seagal standards, this really is, like, pretty bottom of the barrel stuff.
Right. I mean, this is really the only thing you're recommending. This is the novelty of what it is, right? And it's almost like, watch a bunch of other Seagal DTV flicks first. But, I mean, like for a podcast episode, there's plenty in it, right? There's plenty for it.
For sure.
But, if you're doing a 90-minute watch by yourself on a Saturday morning or something, like you're doing a time killer, this is going to be so bonkers that it's probably going to ruin the rest of your day. Like, this is one that probably watch with your friends who are into this kind of thing and just get goofy with it, because like you said, it misses a lot of the hallmarks that you want from a Seagal film. It's so, the whole idea of it is so sautéed and wrong. So it does make me think, though, as you're talking about kind of the hallmarks of what we like in Seagal, is I wonder if there's just some stuff in Harvester where they take the watermelon thing, or the other kind of stuff that we think of as goofy in Seagal, and it's just so bad that the distributors are like, we can't release this, and we've got to do something else, because there's really no other explanation for why you would do this to a movie.
That is true, because, like, the whole making it a drug addict thing, like, really, like I mentioned with the thing about the kind of blade, the curved blade weapon and stuff like that, there's lots of it opens up lots of plot holes, and, like, there's things in the movie that, like, make way more sense if they're, like, an alien race.
Right.
Like, the way that the drug, it's never explained the way the drug interacts with people, in the sense of, like, we're told it turns people into mindless killers, but that's not exactly true, because, like, the people who take it, who are, like, the Romanian extras, are turned into mindless killers, but Arun has taken it, and he's not a mindless killer. Apparently, he has all his faculties, and he can control his powers. Same with the Queen, but apparently they're still, and it makes sense that their powers are stronger if it's like an alien race, and, like, it's just like, these are, like, the kind of minion aliens, and Arun's, like, the kind of second in command kind of lieutenant alien, and the Queen is, like, the Queen, so, like, of course she's the most powerful of all, like. So if it's structured like that, it makes more sense. Whereas if it's just drug addicts, it's like, well, why is it interacting like this? Why is it not turning them into mindless killers as well? And why are they not just, like, kind of hopeless addicts as well? Are they, like, special in some way? Do they have other superpowers that we didn't know about before they started taking the drug? Like, it opens up so many more questions than we might have had if they're just, like, aliens. It's the same with the kind of lizardy flashing eye thing. It's like why would a drug like, drugs can affect your eyes, make your pupils bigger and stuff like that, but, like, they're not going to change your physiology to such an extent that, like, it's going to give you that, like, kind of lizard eyes. Like, I mean, that seems weird, like, and again, this is something I would not question if they were just, you just say they're an alien race, and I'd be like, oh, they're an alien race, fine, their eyes work like that. Like...
Right, exactly. I mean, one thing I'm thinking about as we're talking about this is, I wonder if the vials were a poison that the alien race was trying to... I wonder if the alien race was trying to poison the water supply to kill people, or turn them all into alien vampires themselves, or something like that. Maybe that was the goal. And the guy was using and so with the vials and the syringes already being a part of the movie, I wonder if that's where they were like, well, what do we do with these vials and syringes? Oh, we'll make the super soldier thing be like a drug. And that was their best way of mitigating that. But you're right, it wouldn't give you lizard eyes. And like you said, it doesn't make sense that some people get the drug in them and they just are mindless killers, whereas like you said, Arun, he in particular, right, he really has control over it, because it's he only uses his abilities when he's escaping from the prison, for example, or when he's in certain circumstances. But I wonder if that was their way of trying to split the difference on these vials of liquid that just happen to be in these scenes. Oh, we'll say it's the drug because but like you said, the whole thing makes much more sense as vampires.
Yeah. Absolutely. The whole vampire alien race thing makes it much more kind of, you can kind of disregard these things because you can kind of be like, oh well, okay, yeah, they're from another world. Okay, what do I know? Right. you can make your alien race however you want to make your alien race. Whereas if you make them just human kind of, hopped up drug addicts, then it's kind of, there's a lot more questions there.
Yeah, it's a fascinating thing. And it is I think one of the things this movie does show is that whatever you think you can do with a movie, when you think of Godfrey Ho movies where it's he buys all these Thai and Hong Kong movies, and then he gets this one actor, Richard Harrison, and he brings him out to Hong Kong and he shoots him in a ninja costume and tells him he's making one ninja movie, and then ends up making 20 of them, right? There's this weird alchemy that goes on with those movies that are fun.
Yeah.
But it also kind of shows you too, you can't just do that with movies. There's as much as you try to piece it together and try to make it work, there are always going to be these holes here if you're taking one movie and trying to turn it into a completely different movie. And maybe like you said, maybe this should be a good a lesson for in film school to be what do you do when you make a movie and the distributor wants something else? Here's an example of what where the limitations are.
Here's an example of it going really, really well.
Exactly. Well, Scott, as we're wrapping up here, anything else about Attack Force that we didn't mention that you wanted to cover?
Is there anything else I want to mention? Oh yeah, I do want to mention. There are a couple of things actually. I did think it was really funny that when Seagal finally beats the Queen, he stabs her in the head, and that causes a weird light effect, yes, as if she's some sort of magical being, and not just a hopped up drug addict. Yes. So that was kind of would have made more sense in the previous movie, but that was kind of fun and ridiculous and very kind of mid 2000s. I think there's a couple of very mid 2000s things that happened as well, because we had a whooshy title effect at the beginning of the movie.
Yes.
And I did that, two more things actually. The one thing about the opening title credits, we didn't mention that. I thought they were funny because it was just this kind of weird. I think they were trying to make it arty, but basically we're getting shots of the strip club and scantily clad ladies, but it's done in this kind of weird, out of focus way, as if somebody smeared Vaseline on the camera lens. So I was like, well, that's interesting. I guess they're trying for something there. But,
I forgot about that. I completely forgot about that. Because I think that's the one thing about this. Probably why I should do a better job taking notes, because I saw those credits and I was like, huh, that's interesting. And then suddenly I go through the rest of this movie where I've got the dubbed Seagal and I've got the drug.
I know.
And I completely forgot about that. Yes, you're right. It was very interesting the way that they did that.
Yeah. Oh, and the last thing I wanted to mention was, and I don't know if this was like a line that like Seagal wrote and was like, this sounds really wise, but there's like a number of characters. I think Seagal says it twice, and the Queen says it. And I think one other character says it. But I wrote at some point, is revenge is a two-way street this movie's catchphrase? Because like...
Yes, I forgot about that. Yeah.
Because people just keep saying it as if it's the wisest thing anybody has ever said. And then, like, when the Queen said it, as if she knew Marshall and said, of course, you know, revenge is a two-way street. And I was like, what the fuck is this line?
They were proud of that line, and I do
They
wonder.
super were.
Yeah, I wonder if either they heard it somewhere else and they thought it was great and they used it, or if it's just like somebody came up with it once and was like, "Yes, let's keep doing that." Because it's like, I mean, it's a great concept, right? Like you think you're getting revenge on this person, but hey, maybe they've got a beef with you and they've got a bone, like. An issue that they need to get revenge on for you. So it's like, hey, both of you might be trying to get revenge here. I don't understand what the Queen situation, what did she need to get revenge on Seagal for? That part didn't make any sense. I get in his case, he wants revenge for his three guys that were murdered earlier in the film, but I also kind of feel like he would have gotten that with Raina, but I guess not because he feels like the Queen did that. So yeah, you're right about that. They were proud of that line for sure.
Yeah, I think it's said like 4 times in the movie.
Yes, I think you're right. I mean, I remember the Queen saying it at the end, and I was like, "Okay, we're really gonna button this one." Yes.
I think when the Queen said it, and when the Queen said it, it's like the 3rd or 4th time it's said in the movie,
Right.
and by that stage, because it's like it says it's co-written by Joe Halpin and Steven Seagal. I just imagine that they were writing revenge is a two-way street, and then they both high-fived, like, yeah, man, we did it.
Exactly. Well, because you know what I'm thinking too. I want to say like a lot of her lines were dubbed as well. I wonder if the people doing the dubbing, they just started like. They just kept using that line when they were dubbing in new dialogue because it was like easier than thinking of new things to say.
I guess so. That could be that. Yeah.
Yeah, this is a trip. This movie is. I mean, when we were talking about what the next Seagal movie would be, and we're kind of in the 2006 range, I thought we should try Attack Force because it is so bonkers. It's one that I think for people who are kind of getting into these kinds of movies. I want to say, because I do kind of feel like with the way when we've been doing these movies, I think people are enjoying listening to kind of have somebody else try to make sense of what's happening here. So I do wonder if people are going to be like excited to hear like. I want to hear the two of them kind of come up with some kind of cohesive thought about this film because it made no sense to me.
Yeah, absolutely. I think like. Yeah, maybe people have like some sort of sense of Schadenfreude of like they're just enjoying us. Like they say, like if we continue doing this to try and cover them all, like in 5 years' time we're gonna have like a 20-a-day smoking habit, and we're just gonna be sinking back whiskeys as we try and talk about these films.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, because I mean, this one is probably one of the on the extreme end. But I mean, one of the things, like thinking about Seagal's career, like we're staying in the mid, we've been staying pretty early here where things aren't quite so bad. When you get into the 2010s of Seagal, there's like another level of stuff that we've got coming here too. That's going to be like, it's the sitting to standing ratio is even greater than, and obviously this movie's a little bit high for the mid 2000s where he's sitting a lot more than he usually does. But yeah, once we start getting to these other, the ones in the 2010s, I mean, the sitting ratio is just, the sitting, but also like, you'll be watching scenes and just saying like, is he in that scene with the other actor? It looks like he is, but then are they doing an effect of like, like a movie that's got twins played by one actor and they're just putting them in the same scene together? Like it's all kind of craziness that comes with some of these later ones.
Yeah, and I think obviously we're seeing the beginning of that in these movies. With these last two that we've covered, like, because Shadow Man has that where he has the scene where he's sitting across from Imelda Staunton, but they're clearly not in the same room. Yeah, these are one of the lazy ones. I mean, obviously, I don't know, like. Maybe we should try one of the better ones next, since we had because I feel like the 2006 was a bad year,
right.
we started pretty hopeful with The Keeper, which is a relatively fun Man on Fire knockoff,
right.
Yeah. I think maybe we'll try one of the better ones just to give us a reprieve before we deep dive into something terrible again.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. I mean, I was surprised. I was like, oh, that's right. We've already done 4 of these at this point, I think. We did, Shadow Man, Mercenary for Justice, The Keeper. This is the 4th one we're doing right now. This is the 4th one. Yeah. So I was like, wow, we've already gone through 4 so far. So, we've there's plenty more to go, so we've got a lot. But yeah, I think you're right. There are some that are a little bit better, and so it's probably good to kind of cleanse the palate, especially after this one here, because this one was a fascinating one to say the least. Perfect. Well, Scott, as we're wrapping up here, anything that you'd like to plug?
Just my usual plugs. Got all 90s action all the time. A monthly podcast covering all your favorite and some of your not favorite films from the 90s. So we just talk about a 90s action film each month, and we do it to the corresponding year. So in this year of 2024, we'll be covering the films of 1994, and Matt will be on an upcoming episode, which will be in April sometime. I don't know when this will come out, but sometime in late April, you can hear Matt talk about Highlander 3. So that'll be exciting for all you DTV connoisseur fans. So you can follow us on Twitter at 90s Action. We've also got a Facebook page, just all 90s Action all the time. I'm considering maybe doing a Blue Sky. I don't know. And then you can also listen to us on Last of the Action Heroes network, as well as Spotify and Apple Podcasts and all you use podcasters. And then my other podcast that I'm winding down is New Horror Express, which is I do interviews with indie horror film directors, writers, actors, you name it, novelists, or anybody kind of involved with indie horror. And that is... that started back in 2018, but I'm winding it down now, and I'm going to put the last 2 episodes out in April, so you can look forward to that in April. But even with we'll be keeping all the old episodes up. There is just over 180 episodes in total. I think when I put the last 2 out, it'll be about 185 or something like that. And I'll be keeping them up on the website newhorrorexpress.com. You can check them out there on newhorrorexpress.com, as well as your normal podcatchers, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, all that. And most of the episodes are also on the Morbidly Beautiful network. And then the last thing that I wanted to plug is I took quite a long time away from doing writing reviews. So I used to write film and music reviews. So I started writing again recently, and now I have a Substack called Notes from the Musical Underground, where I'm trying to do it once a fortnight. So once a fortnight, I'll pick a random band, an underground band that I haven't really heard of, and I'll review their latest record. And that some Substacks you have to pay for or whatever. Mine's totally free because it's just one review a fortnight or whatever, so I don't feel that people should pay for something like that. And they're just quick reads, usually about 400 to 500 words, whatever. And that's it. That's all my plugs. Hopefully that's not too many plugs.
No, that's perfect. And definitely for your podcast, I'll have the links for those in the podcast
description, so people can check them out. I know. So this episode is going to air probably before the Highlander episode that I did with for All 90s Action is posted. So probably when this episode airs, I think the most recent one will be Surviving the Game that you did with Sean Malloy from I Must Break This podcast.
Well, yeah, I guess it depends when this episode is aired, because like the March episode.
Oh, right, that's right. We've got March. Yeah, we're still in March.
The March episode, yes, the March episode is still to is still to come out. Yeah. So from the perspective of this recording, next week, my episode on Maverick will come out.
Oh, so, excellent.
So before this episode goes out, the latest episode for my podcast will be on the Mel Gibson 1994 Mel Gibson Western Maverick.
Oh, excellent! So that was a movie. Actually, of all those kind of 60s, 70s TV show remakes that were done in the 90s, that one was one of my favorites. That was one that was really good. So I'm excited to hear that conversation. So as we're recording, so it's always that combination of the recordings when they're all posting that. So this will be people listening right now. You're listening in early April probably. So the episode that we did will come out later on in the month from that. So
later on in April, yes. Yeah. But people can check out the latest episode. By the time this comes out, will be the Maverick episode, and people can check that out. And it's a fun conversation that I have on that.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, it's one of those things where you and I are recording here in the middle of March, and I'm feeling like it's more the end of March than it is. There's still a good 2 weeks left of March for things to happen, and I'm like thinking of it like the month's already over. So that's probably one of those things there for sure. But yeah, as we're wrapping up here, thank you again, Scott, for coming on. This was a fun conversation with a very interesting movie, but thank you again for coming by.
No problem at all. Always happy to come on this podcast, Matt.
Yeah, always a fun time. And thank you, everybody, for listening. And we'll be back soon. Bye, everyone.